sci-fi, fantasy, thriller, poetry, horror, children's, romantasy, and much, much more. Welcome to the Story and Critique Show, where we do live readings of stories from members from the community. We offer a live reading, and then we follow up each story with a critique. So that way the author can walk away with actionable data to help them improve their story right now. Welcome to the community. I'm Kauffman, and I'm on this mission to help writers because I love the writing process. Whether that's brainstorming, writing, or editing, that's all the same to me, but they're all different parts of the process. So come join us because we're starting right now. All right, my friends, I am so glad to have you back here in Story and Critique Show episode 32. We have taken a hiatus on our critique show, and I am so glad to bring it back. And by the way, if you're watching on the replay, I got you covered. Time codes get added to the video at the end of the stream, so that way you can hop to the part of the video, whether that's the critique or whether that's a story that you loved listening to, again and again to make it easier for replayability. All right, beautiful, my friends. So what we're going to do, we're going to be hopping into a story shortly. What I'm going to do, I'll go over my process for how we do submissions and what the critique show looks like for any of you who are new and just joining us in the community. But first, let me hop into the comments. Bobby, welcome, 2 hours early. Definitely holding down the stream, my friend. Glad to have you here. I'm getting sun in my eye. And Courtney, like, favorite show of right now is back. Woo! I know, finally. I'm like, finally. Glad to finally have the critique show back. I know it was definitely very much missed. I know, especially by myself. I love reading all of the stories. So I'm very glad to have it. Let's see, you're like, I'm probably going to submit something for a critique, but you do not have to read on today's show. It can just be next show, just whenever. Thanks for that. And Christina, welcome. Hi from California. Thanks for joining us, my friend. Glad to have you in here. Hope the storytelling is treating you well. And ML, welcome. And Mass Toaster, glad to have you here in the stream. Susan Mcgregor, Susan, glad to have you here. Definitely looking forward to diving into your story. Absolutely. I love reading scripts and screenplays. I know we've definitely had our share of screenwriters before, and it speaks to my screenwriting background. So very much looking forward to that. And let's see, ML, glad to have you here in the stream, my friend. Mary, love to have you here. And now all of our community regulars, happy to have you guys here. I know Courtney is doing a happy dance. All right, my friends. So I am so stoked to bring the critique show back to y'all. This is always one of my favorite streams where I get to just read stories and have fun. But for those of you who are new and are just joining us, how does this work? So essentially, you can submit through the submission form a story excerpt, whether that's a book, short story, poetry, novel, script, graphic novel, or anything of the sort. The link to submit is down in the YouTube description. It's also pinned to the comments. So if you're working on a story and you're like, hey, I really need help on it, this is the show. This is the place. Now, once you submit, that goes through all the guidelines. Once I start going through the submission, this is how I go about my critiques. All right. So I like to look at the critique guidelines. Like to look at it in a couple different ways. So I think of it through the character development, the world building, dialogue, plot, and structure. I won't really pay as much attention to grammar for the purposes of the show, but I like to ask myself when I'm reading, which area of writing does the story do well with? And then which area does it feel like it has opportunities in? So I always like to ask myself, okay, I think character development and world building is great, but maybe the dialogue is really struggling. So I think by breaking it down, it makes it a little easier for this critique format. And then I get this question all the time. When we do the critique show, a lot of the times that the way that the critiques translate to, this ends up being similar to what you would expect from an alpha reading crossed with a developmental edit. So you're essentially going to get a lot of big picture items, things that I might notice immediately and recognize that I do not read any of these stories beforehand. So all of the stories are cold read, so that way I can provide the best live experience and then be able to give you some great feedback. So I want to say as of today, we've reviewed over probably about like 160 stories, give or take, on the previous 31 episodes of the critique show. So definitely very cool. Now, as I'm going through the stories, I'm going to highlight as I go. Highlighting, neither a good or a bad thing. It's just me keeping track of my notes so that way I know what I want to speak to when I hop into the critique portion. All right. And most important, I highly, highly, highly encourage you, come join the conversation. Come be involved. Whether you've submitted a story or not, if you're hearing one of the stories and something really speaks to you, drop a comment. I guarantee you that the authors will really appreciate it. If something doesn't make sense, feel free to ask a question. Feel free to say, hey, you know what? That just doesn't work for me. And that's all right. Because if we're dropping comments, if we're putting our stories out there, our ultimate goal is to help each other make the stories as incredible as possible. So that way we can publish them, option them, and get them to that final draft. All right, my friends. So queued up at the top of the stream, I have Eli's Baboon Pie and Jaguar Champagne. Eli, I am so glad. I know, Eli, we had your submission from the previous show back in October. So I'm very, very glad, my friend. I have your story queued up. We're going to be starting with Eli's. All right, my friends. So let me set this up on my end. All right, perfect. Okay, so I am all ready to go on my end. Wanted to make sure that I had all of that situated. And let's see. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do, in terms of the time, I tend to give each story reading roughly about 10 minutes, give or take, and then the critiques roughly about 10 minutes. So that way we can get through as many of the stories as possible. Okay, perfect. So once again, Eli, have your story all queued up. We're starting with Baboon Pie and Jaguar Champagne. For those of you who don't know, we've read through previous excerpts of Eli's story in previous episodes of the Critique Show as we embark on a journey with Zikung and his very cool, very, very cool motorbike, which has like its life of its own. And he has this like really cool pistol. It's like this laser pistol that he's stolen from, or that he got from an assassin. And it's a very, very cool setup. So we're actually hopping into the next section of this first part. All right. And then let's see. So since I've started asking more questions, I can now review what are some things that we're looking for. The setup, we follow an aging bandit named Zikung as he becomes entangled in a dark world where human life is cheap and easily made, and revolutionary technologies are reshaping what a person can and can't be. He lives with the constant guilt of his involvement in the death of his son and travels the American West on a highly customized and sophisticated superbike in search of some way to atone for his sins and let his son rest at last. And one of the biggest questions is, what are your impressions of Zikung, our main character? How do we feel he handles this situation? So let's help Eli out and dig into it. All right. I am all ready. Previously, Zikung forced Corey to stop his truck and open the crates in the trailer to look for something Zikung wants. He was glad he let the younger man do the hard work. Normally, there would be several guys Corey's size, and they'd each have a pry bar, and they'd get it open in 30 seconds. It took Corey nearly 15 minutes to get the first crate open. It took 8 crates to find what Zekung was looking for. It had been 3 hours since Corey opened the first crate. When he finally cracked open the 8th, Zekung was singing the aria of an obscure Austrian opera. He told Corey it was to encourage him to pick the right crate, but he stopped singing and looked at the contents. He'd started to doubt they would find it before the sun came up, but there it was, the chip he'd been looking for. "Hold it, Corey," he exclaimed, patting the younger man on the shoulder. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He bent over and picked one of the microchips up off its foam insulation and looked at it in the light. "Oh, yeah, that's it, baby." What is it?" asked Corey, out of breath and exhausted from opening crates. "Military level firmware upgrade for the superbike. They try to hide all the best features from hardworking civilians like you and me, Corey. You believe that?" He looked at Corey as if he expected some sort of response. How dare they?" Zekung smiled warmly at Corey. "Eat that other chocolate bar, my young friend. You're gonna be glad you did." Corey's eyes darted to Zekung, and fear gripped his face for a moment. What do you mean?" he asked. "Go on now, Corey, eat up. I'm gonna grab the super bike. I'll be right back." "Grab the bike? What are you talking about, man? Haven't you done enough?" "Eat." Zekung frowned and nodded at the chocolate bar. It was on one of the other crates with Corey's overshirt, tossed aside after the third crate. With that, Zekung turned sharply on his heel and exited the cargo container. As he walked over to the superbike, he pulled his cigarette case out of his writing jacket and removed another cigarillo. He lit it and rolled the superbike over to the cargo container. He rested it back on its stand and went around to the back, where he opened a small compartment and took out a long rope. This in hand, he hopped back up into the cargo container and walked over to where Corey had been. But Corey was nowhere to be found. "Corey, where'd you go, buddy?" shouted Zekung. He turned around, but as he did, the lights went out. "Come on, Corey, I thought we were friends." He nodded 4 times and jerked his head sharply to the right while performing a sequence of precisely timed blinks and activated infrared spectrum enhancement on his glasses. He could see Corey standing near the light switch, the pry bar held high over his head, ready to bring it down on Zekung. He could see him as plain as day with his glasses. He sighed. He was disappointed. "I didn't want to do this, Corey, but you haven't given me much choice." "Fuck your choice! You're a dead man!" Corey screamed, totally unaware that Zekung could see him in the dark. He ran toward him, swinging the pry bar wildly. Zekun calmly took the everyday pistol out of its holster and shot Corey below the left knee. The younger man fell instantly and roared and howled in pain. He screamed at Zekun for several full minutes before it became too much for him to bear, and he had to rest. "Are you finished, Corey?" "Fuck you, man! You fucking shot me!" Corey wheezed defiantly. "Only because you were trying to kill me. I wanted to be friends, remember? I was just gonna tie you up. Now I've got to tie you up with a gunshot wound. And that feels downright cruel." "Tie me up? What the fuck, man? I'm bleeding here! You fucking shot me!" "I don't like it either, Corey. Believe me, I don't." Zekung frowned and started wrapping the end of the rope around Corey's ankle. The young man howled in pain. "Why do you need to tie me up, man?" Corey was fighting with all his might to scream at Zekung through the pain. You, his voice quivered with agony. "You fucking..." "Yes, I know. I shot you, but I've got to install the chip." Corey looked more incredulous than ever at this. Install the what? Install the fucking chip? I'm gonna bleed to death here, man. You're gonna work on your fucking bike? What if the chip doesn't work? Or what if I pick the wrong one by mistake, Corey? I can't very well let you leave before I know it's going to work. When am I going to get this opportunity again? "Man, fuck your opportunity, man." Corey was now sobbing softly. "You fucking shot me." He pounded his fist into his thigh and immediately regretted it, grimacing in pain. Now, Corey. It won't take me more than an hour. Zae-kyung reached into Corey's pants pocket and grabbed the keys out of it, and then he took the chocolate bar off the crate and tossed it to Corey. It was still dark in the container, so Corey didn't see it, but it landed near enough that he wouldn't have to move. He turned the light back on, closed the cargo container, locked it, and moved the truck out of the road. This area was remote enough, but the sun would be coming up before too much longer. Best to clear things up now. He replaced the chip in the superbike and everything seemed in order. He walked back up to the cargo container and pounded his fist against the door. You still in there, Corey? The chip works! Lucky us! Anyways, I'm going to get going. I've notified your employer that you're out here. I'm sure they'll be very motivated to recover you and their property. Just know that you won't be able to track me. Say hi to Jimmy for me. At that, he heard Corey screaming about Jimmy and chuckled to himself as he walked away. Put an anonymous call into the warehouse over there down the highway and let him know their man's out here bleeding, Zae-kyung said to the superbike. And remind me to set aside some of that jerky for Jimmy. He fished the case with the woman and the tiger out of his riding jacket, lit one of the cigarillos, and eased himself back down onto the superbike. The engine roared to life, and Zae-kyung rode off into the first rays of the dawn that peeked over the horizon, his hair whipping wildly in the cool morning air. Awesome, Eli. That was a very, very cool story. I absolutely love that. Now, I know for myself, I remember having read the earlier section of the story. I want to say that we went through Zae-kyung parts 1 and 2, maybe about 10 critique shows ago. So it was probably back in August, September, maybe July even, sometime between July through September. And I absolutely loved it. When I think back to the parts that really, really stood out to me, and like I pull up my my guidelines, I think it's very clear that character development is definitely a huge strength. I think Zae-kyung is a very, very like awesome and well-developed character. Very, very cool. Like I know I had so much fun. I can tell that you've done a lot of world building from certain elements like the gun, the bike, the organization that is referred to of Corey's employer. The dialogue is fun. I think the dialogue is fun. I think there's some opportunities for it to be cut down in a couple areas, but that's more from like an editing, refining sense. I think you've captured his voice very, very well. I think Zae-kyung's voice is stronger. Corey's, you could probably refine a little bit, but I do like Zae-kyung is very clear. Plot is good, and I have no complaints about the structure. So yeah, so I think right now the biggest opportunity is probably some character development and dialogue more on Corey's part, if any. But overall, it was very well written, and I could tell you definitely gone through this a couple of times. So absolutely, it was a very fun piece. I can tell people from the community liked it as well. Like, hello, cool, more baboon pie. Yes, LeMay remembers. Hey, what's up, TR? Glad to have you here. Welcome. Susan, thank you. I sent a story for feedback. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I have your story queued up. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, so it's definitely the end of the first chapter. I know we've gone through the first couple parts of it. Yeah, I value these readings so much because hearing the dialogue out loud is so helpful. And I think there's certain characters with live readings where I'm able to capture the voice of the character sometimes better than others, just depending on the character style. And I feel pretty comfortable with bringing Zae-kyung to life because I feel like I have a good sense of his character. Maybe that's a little bit from the acting standpoint. So that's definitely something I really appreciate. All right, so let's hop into the critique portion of this. All right, perfect. So let's hop back to the beginning and see what we got. All right, so let's so going back into it, he was glad. So we did start in the middle of a chapter, right? So And I remember from the previous 2 sections of the chapter that the beginning of it is a setup for Zekung and the motorbike, giving the setting up for Zekung's background. And then this is a bit of a heist. But I think what Eli, that you do well here is that you still bring us along in the plot, even though this is the back end of the chapter, in the microchip aspect of it. I believe in the beginning of it, you set it up that it's some type of like heist, and it comes across as cool, like westernish sci-fi vibe, and then it's introduced that I think it is that we don't know what it is that he's stealing until he probably gets to the back of this. So I think that was very, very cool. I know, right? I know. Sometimes I do the sound effects. I always try to be with sound effects. I always try to be wary with if I'm doing like vocal noises that the mic doesn't always pick up sound effects. Sometimes it might be like too loud if I do like screams or like certain things. I try to be wary of the audio. But absolutely. I tend to think that if you struggle to get the words out, it needs to be smoother. A little bit, but I think it's also important to recognize that your story's in, let's see, what did you say? I want to say that this story is in so this story's still in the first draft. So where, as a first draft, the story is exactly where it needs to be. In all honesty, a lot of like the cleaning up and like refining words, refining like cutting out stuff, that's all stuff that ends up happening in the second, third, and fourth draft, whether that's through yourself or whether that's through bringing editors or readers. So right now, the story is in a great place for the draft that it's at. Let's see. So it had been 3 hours since Corey opened. I wasn't sure what, and I think this was just me. An aria. Was that me? That has to be an opera thing. What is an aria? What is an aria? This could just be me. An aria is a solo song for a singer, usually accompanied by an orchestra that is part of a larger musical work. That's so crazy. I've been in theater most of my life. I'm very surprised I've never heard that term before. Okay, so that is, I'm just going to fix that. All right. So yeah. So I think that's fine then. So Zekung was singing the art when he finally cracked open the 8th. Zekung was singing the aria of an obscure Austrian opera. So I think with this part, this was my question and the thing that I put out there. He told Corey to encourage him to pick the right crate. Why the parentheses? So when we think about adding parentheses, parentheses is used very infrequently for a reason. When you do a parentheses, it's basically an aside. It's like an additional note that you want the reader to know that doesn't really work as interiority. Sometimes I like to personally use parentheses as a breaking the fourth wall. That's just a personal preference, because then the question I ask myself is like, all right, well, let's say we get rid of the parentheses. Zekung was singing the aria of an Austrian opera. Let's say if we just did this, right? We put in, blocked it by commas. Zekung was singing the aria of an obscure Austrian opera. He told Corey to encourage him to pick the right crate, but he stopped singing and looked at the contents. So I was like, I kind of go back and forth. Like, I don't think this specific thing is necessary as a parentheses, only because it draws the reader's attention out of the present moment, right? And you're basically using it to tell them. He told Corey to encourage him to pick the right crate. That's interesting. Okay. So then the question makes me ask is like, okay, so as a reader, he's singing some type of opera. So is this like a fear tactic? Is this like a comedic tactic? And I think because I don't have enough sense of what the tactic is, the parentheses ends up kind of creating this, it's almost like an unintentional intrigue, which could work if you're trying to build the intrigue for it. But I think it feels like what we read, that the point of it is like, we want to just get into the picking of the crates. And the core of this is Corey and Zekung's back and forth, which is so fun and interesting. And really Corey backstabbing a Zekung. So I would even get rid of things like this, because I think it would be better to frame it that Corey is opening up to Zekung. So then when Corey double crosses him, it makes more sense. And it's more of like, should have seen it coming. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that one. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, like I've used parenthetical stuff several times throughout. I was just kind of keeping with the convention. Interesting. I was just kind of keeping with the convention. Gotcha. So this is definitely a thing that you're doing consistently with Zikung. That makes sense. Also, I want them to question if he was telling the truth. Okay. So then it's really a challenge to his narration. So it's really a challenge to the narrator. He told Corey it was to encourage him to pick the right crate. But he stopped singing and looked at the contents. He'd started to doubt they would find it before the sun came up. But there it was, the chip he'd been looking for. It had been okay. And I think what it is then, Ayla, is what comes to mind. Like, was he really trying to help or annoy him? But I can remove that. Yeah, I think I go back and forth. I think the only reason is because you're introducing a lot of information in this. So when I think about just this single paragraph, where we're introducing an opera, which is actually kind of cool, and then I think like, okay, so the point of the paragraph is Zikung's saying something to maybe distract the guy, or maybe, and I like the unreliable narrator of it. But I think the point of it is him finding the chip, because he finds the chip by the end of the paragraph. He'd started to doubt where they would. He'd started to doubt they would find it before the sun came up. You know what I'd almost prefer, Eli. I would almost prefer, instead of getting that aside, I'd almost prefer getting what the opera is. I'd rather get a little bit more detail on what it is he's singing, right? So instead of telling us, because this is just a type of telling, and this could be fine. But I think it could be effective if you had Zikung maybe give us a line, like use a dialogue of Zikung like whistling or singing like a phrase from the opera, or like you don't have to do dialogue specifically, or giving us some type of clue, and then you could use the song, the music, as not as more showing as compared to telling. I think that could be a little bit more effective, I would say. Yeah, that would actually be really good. I think that would be really, really good. Actually, now that I think about it, I think if you just started with him singing, you can then use the sing, like come up with some clever words for whatever song it is, and then use the music as like a metaphor for the moment. And then I think that would create tension with Corey. And then it leaves it to the reader to decide, oh, is he helping, or is he just effing with him? So yeah, I actually think that'd be better. Agreed. All right. So then moving down here, hold it, Corey, he exclaimed. What is it? Corey asked, out of breath and exhausted. Military level firmware upgrades for the superbike. Love it, right? So then we get some world building. They try to hide all the best features from hardworking civilians like you and me, Corey. You believe that? I love this. So this was something I liked because this is a very clear, this very clear world building, right? Right now we're trying to find the chip. We're trying to find the chip. So technically this is just kind of some extra stuff, but this just gives us the indication of like, all right, the superbike is upgradable, and this company that, whatever a company that Zikung is stealing from, is we're getting more background about the company and the world. Great job. This works for me. And I think once again, Zekung's dialogue, the reason it works is because he has this upbeat attitude, but he's befriended Corey. And from the previous scene, this is actually a robbery. So we see the funny original interaction with Corey and Zikung. So now we're like, okay, so Zikung's trying to be friends with him, and it kind of puts us on edge as the reader, which is the right thing. How dare they? I love this. I think yeah, and I mean I think like I forgot where the description was for Corey in the previous section. I think you could add I think you could add a little bit of an action. I think you could add an action to this, or I would add an action in between that might give us a little character development for Corey. Uh he he rubbed his chubby fingers together. Rubbed his chubby fingers. He ate the with the chocolate bar. I'm just like brainstorming on the spot. I think some type of action, because I think he has some type of chocolate bar right now. Yeah, because you say the chocolate bar. I dropping the chocolate bar. He stuttered. He stuttered. I mean, that's just an example. I think you could do something that does better tension. Oh yeah, like I think sighing in resignation could work as well. He sighed in resignation. Well, I mean, I think the only thing with that then is we already know. Like, I think that's already clear from the dialogue. I would rather like it add an action, add something that the reader doesn't know. But this is just a subjective thing. I think that's just me. So you could go either way with that. Oh. I was like, all right, we'll get there. Okay, so I think, but from a pure comedy, I think that's funny. Or you could add it afterwards. I think the reason being is add a little bit more development for Corey, just so I get a better sense of who Corey is. But you might have done a good job of that when you set him up. I forgot. All right, what do you mean? He has go on now, Corey. Eat up. I'm gonna grab the super bike. I'll be right back. Fear gripped his face. I'm in like such an editor mindset and where I would get rid of extra words, and fear gripped his face for a moment. Extra word stuffing we do not need for a moment, because we already know that we already know that it's in the present moment. And we just focus on the action. Corey's eyes stared to Zikung and fear gripped his face. Let's see. What do you mean? Go on now, Corey. Eat up. I'm going to grab the super bike. I'll be right back. And let's see. I know Mass Toaster and Neil both brought up a couple good points. Neil was like, it was good the back and forth with Corey saying you shot me, went for a few beats. It's hard for me to know without reading before if he would be scared if he gets the bike. Yeah, there was also the setup in the previous section, and I think it does set it up for their dynamic. I think it's cool that he has special vision glasses. So up to you. See more of their use in scenes later. Yeah, so we can definitely tell that like the tech is definitely going to be predominant for Zikung. I was confused by Corey attack Zikung. I felt, yeah. Okay, cool. And then I think Eli explained that. Yeah, so Corey, Zikung is essentially robbing Corey. That's why. So, and that's interesting, right? So now we've kind of got this dynamic where we're like, okay, so Zikung is now trusting Corey, even though he's robbed him. But you use the chocolate bar to incentivize that. Corey is like, all right, Corey is like, I don't care about this company. Just give me food. So I think you've kind of set that up, and I think to draw attention out even more, I think before Corey backstabs him, I would try to have Corey like try to open up to him a little bit right before Zikung goes and moves outside the truck. Zikung ran out of the truck bars on one of the other crates. Toss that after the third crate. Yep, and this was all fine. Okay, that's right. So that was really, really short. So grab the bike. What are you talking about, man? Haven't you done enough? So instead of this, I think this is where I would change it. I would go on now, Corey, eat up. I'm going to grab the super bike. I'll be right back. I think I'd actually change this for Corey being a little bit more deceptive. Even though he's scared, I think I would suggest Corey like, sure. Thanks for the chocolate, man. I hate this company. Or do something that suggests that Corey's warming up to Zikung. And I think this would be the place to do it. Because then when Zikung comes back, the Corey, the double cross makes even more sense. It's just a little bit of tension. This is an interesting idea. Gore saying if there was an apple in the environment, picking up an apple and taking a bite would also work. The apple being very symbolic of potential danger in a person or situations being a factor. Yeah, actually, I think I could have sworn that Zikung was chewing on something, but maybe it was just the chocolate bar. I was like, for some reason, Gore, I could actually agree with you. I could totally see Zekung just pulling out an apple out of somewhere. But we also, with the world, not sure what type of food he has access to, and not sure what fruit is accessible. But that's a really interesting idea. The reason Corey is scared is because Zekung is so unpredictable. He didn't expect him to say he needs to eat something. Exactly. And I think when you play into Zekung singing at the beginning, the randomness of his actions will highlight that. Let's see. Corey nodded 4 times, jerked his head sharply. Yep. And then the glasses was cool. He nodded 4 times. He nodded 4 times. I was like, from a descriptive standpoint, I closed my eyes. He nodded 4 times. So from the reader, does the reader have to know that he nodded 4 times? 1, 2. Okay. So I mean that could be like a character thing. He nodded 4 times and jerked his head sharply to the right while performing a sequence of precisely timed blinks. He nodded 4 times and jerked his head sharply. I like to get rid of words like that, and jerked his head sharply. Then you let the reader imagine where he's jerking his head while performing a sequence of precisely timed blinks and activated infrared spectrum enhancement on his glasses. I would rephrase this statement. He nodded 4 times and jerked his head sharply. Only because, so we have an action, which is cool. I do like the action. And then we have the glasses. The glasses is, and I know you've set it up a little bit already, but from a description standpoint, while performing a sequence of precisely timed blinks. Okay, he nodded 4 times and jerked his head sharply while performing a sequence of precisely timed blinks. So he nodded his head 4 times, jerked his head sharply, and blinked. Okay, blinks. I think I would split this up, even though they're part of the same thing, because the glasses is really interesting. I would actually lead this up so that way the reader can focus on the action in the first sentence and then do something for focus on glasses in this sentence. That way you don't chance losing the very cool, because this action is actually super cool. I'm like, that's actually, now that I've like thought about it, I'm like, the action's super cool. I don't want the action to get lost in the glasses, right? And the glasses are probably important, especially later on. So that's just something how I would go about it. And then this is good. I actually really like this. I think once you set up Zekung's randomness a little bit more, this will play even better. That's good. I'm looking at other Corey. Tie me up. I'm bleeding here. And then I think that what's happening with Corey is very funny. Corey's like, of course he's going to die. And I think I'm pretty good with the rest of this chapter. I think the only note for this was I hate putting multiple questions back to back. This is just a pet peeve of mine. This could just be me, but I think from a reader standpoint, when we ask a question, the reader wants to know the answer. When we ask 2 questions, sometimes the reader may forget the first question and then focus on the second. Not saying that's going to happen to all readers, but once again, my goal is to make the reading experience as easy as possible for your reader. So I don't like to use more than 1 question back to back unless it's like 100% necessary. So then I would just like blend the merges into 2 questions. What if I picked the wrong one by mistake? What if the chip doesn't work? Or what if I picked the wrong one by mistake? Okay, I could see. I mean, I almost wonder if he's doing this more to like psych Corey out. I wonder if this is more like a psych out than anything, than him actually wanting to know the questions. Yeah, no, I got that. I got that with the glasses, but I did. I think the only reason why splitting it up into 2 is because so the reader doesn't lose the action of the glasses for that reason specifically. But you could totally keep them merged in the same sentence. It's totally a subjective decision. Let's see. I don't mean to push back hard, but they are both rhetorical. Would that change things at all? So now that I read it, right, and I actually do like that they're rhetorical. the reader's not always going to know that they're rhetorical, right? So asked from a reading standpoint, I think the way to fix that then would be to break this up and add some action, right? What if the chip doesn't work? Zikung patted Corey on the chest. And then like I think you could split that up because the reader's not going to know that they're rhetorical, right? Or you could go about it a different way. Once he asked the questions, or what if I picked the wrong one by mistake, Corey? And then have Corey respond, I really can't let you know. I could add a thing here with Corey and Zikung smiling. Like I think I would make it a little bit more obvious that it's rhetorical then. For that reason. Yeah. And it could just be that the sentence, like the paragraph or sentence, needs to be cut down. Once again, this could be a subjective thing on my part, but it's just something to keep aware of. I like rhetorical questions, and I actually think this does work for Zikung. I think you just need to make it more obvious that we don't actually care about the answers for it. The reader should be, oh yeah, he's doing that thing where he's just fucking with Corey. Yep, same here. I like him smiling at Corey's answers. A note for your employer. This is good. The employer bit is just world building, which is setting up for later. Awesome. Yep, I completely agree with that. And I think we get the sense of that by the end of the chapter, or by the end of this section. So yeah, really, really great work, Eli. I was very, very much a fan. Thank you so much for submitting, my friend. Definitely enjoyed that. So with that being said, we're going to be hopping into our next story. I have queued up on deck. Susan, I got your story queued up on deck. Lethal to Kill, a sci-fi thriller. I love that we're chilling in the sci-fi genre for a second. But before I do, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I'm here every day with the WriteNow community, whether you're looking for daily writing motivation, the critique show, author interviews, writing tips to just be a better writer. At the end of the month, we have our WriteNow-a-thon writing festival. Make sure you tap those buttons and you'll be alerted when we go live. And I want to say that today marks day 342 of consecutive writing streams. So I'm like, whoo, definitely making some good progress. Let's grow the community. I'm like, hopefully, maybe if we're good, we can try to hit 600 before the festival. So very, very cool. Definitely come join us. Very, very awesome. Now, as I'm queuing up the next story, how's everyone doing? How's the writing vibes treating all y'all? I'd love to hear it. Hopefully we're going to be able to try to get some good writing in. I know I've kind of been taking a break from Scarecrow. I took some break from Scarecrow at the end of November, and I'm now just getting back into it. And now that I'm kind of like refreshing my mind with all the Scarecrow stuff, I'm thinking of all like the cool things that I want to add to the elements of the story where I wasn't sure how to solve before. So I think kind of taking like a 1-2 week break from Scarecrow kind of helped me with solving some problems that I wasn't sure how I wanted to solve before I took the break. It's an unintentional break, but it worked out nonetheless. Yeah, Eli. And by the way, so this is a good call out. If you want to find the other episodes for the previous story and critique show, the description in the YouTube description of every story and critique show, it lists all the author stories that I read. So you could just go back through the episodes and look at the descriptions, and the descriptions, you should be able to find the excerpts of yours that you've read, Eli. I know it's been a little while, so my guess is that your previous excerpts, because I know we haven't done Zikung in a while. I know we did other excerpts from your world. I want to say it was probably maybe episodes 15 to 25, maybe. That'd be a guess. Hey, what's up, Liam? Welcome to the stream, my friend. You're like, I will definitely watch the VOD of this stream to take some notes. Absolutely. So once again, like if you're working on your storytelling, Liam, this is a great way to just like learn other techniques, learn things that maybe other writers are doing that will help your own storytelling. And that's really my goal of this, right? My goal is to help everyone be a better writer because I want to help you make the writing process easier. I love the entire writing process and I know how challenging certain aspects can be. So thank you for that. I would love to hear though, what are you working on? You writing any cool stories right now? Hey, what's up, Penelope? Crystal and I came up with a festive promise for a Yuletide short story using tarot cards. I'm excited to draft it. Oh, that's really cool. That is so awesome, Penelope. Chris, I would say Crystalia over with Flow Your Mojo and our very own Penelope Hartley over with Aether and Ink. Both had a very cool live stream earlier today. And for anybody who's interested in like tarot or tarot reading, like you should definitely go check out Penelope's channel. She's definitely got a really good setup for tarot and writing and just being more creative. Hey, what's up, Liam? You're like, yeah, I am a fantasy. Awesome. So you're a fantasy author? I totally approve of that. I love fantasies. I love fantasy genre more than anything in the world. If you guys couldn't tell, my number one suggestion, if you're ever stuck on a story and you just don't know how to fix it, then put a dragon on it. If you're ever stuck with the story, whether it's character, world building, feeling unmotivated, and you don't know what to do, put a dragon on it. All right, my friend. So let's hop into the next story. So we got Susan's Lethal to Kill. Wonderful. All right. And let me pull up over here. All right, so I got Susan's story all queued up on my end. Make sure that it was the right length and perfect. All right, so Susan's story is Lethal to Kill. It is a script, which I love screenplays. It means that I'm going to have a clear idea and definition of who the characters are. Once again, for those of you guys just hopping in, I don't read anything before the show. I review my requirements to make sure that it matches the format and that it matches all the things that I need. So that way they work for a live stream format, but I don't read any of the things beforehand. It's all a cold reading because I like to be surprised. All right, my friend. So I got this here. And once again, if you want to submit and get feedback on your story, link is down in the YouTube description. All right, so let's see what we got. We got Lethal to Kill. Let me go look at the setup for it. All right, Susan. So Lethal to Kill, science fiction thriller. Half alien, half human spy Susie Wells heads to Los Angeles, California to save a kidnapped head studio from the Russians, hoping that her secret life as a spy is not revealed. She wants to keep her double life as secret as possible to avoid being killed by the enemies and protect her loved ones. And let's see, it's a script. So it looks like this is in a later draft, which is awesome. So it's gone through some drafting already. And perfect. All right. Lethal to Kill by Susan Mcgregor. Florida, fade-in. Exterior, building. Nite, New York City. 2006. Susie Wells, 20s, aka Veronica King, beautiful, young, tough, wearing a black, tight-knit bodysuit, climbing on the windows. There's one thing. She is also half alien, half human alien spy. She is determined to complete the mission. Only she kills them first. She keeps climbing on the windows. She listens to the ambulance siren down onto the street. How am I going to get the information without being killed? She takes a breath. Does it have something to do with my past as half alien, half human, who was the only one who survived the asteroid that destroyed my planet Eero and my family? How many people kidnapped me so many times over the years? She slides into the window, landing on the floor. Cut to interior building. She crawls onto the floor. She looks to the right of the room. The information will help stop the war in Iraq. No more deaths. She looks up the computer on the desk. She types on the keyboard, keeping her eyes on the screen. Just remember the code. See you on the computer screen. She listens to the footsteps heading over to her direction. Come on. She keeps on having her eyes on the computer screen. She notices a needle heading over to her neck. She turns around, taking the needle away from the enemy's hand lightly. The needle falls onto the floor. She gets off the chair. She climbs on top of the male enemy. She punches the male enemy in the face. He pulls tuft of her hair, only 2 strings of hair. She looks at the man. What the fuck? Chuck! Chuck, Susie's boyfriend and another spy, mid-20s, looks at her. Chuck is drop-dead, gorgeous guy she ever met. A type of guy that she could never get in high school. He doesn't say anything. You were supposed to kill me? Chuck nods. Did you date me so? Susie's voice trails off. Chuck. Susie pulls back away from Chuck. You never loved me, did you? You loved me? Then kill me! Come on, you have to understand. She tries to hold back the tears, gulping her throat. Susie. You trapped me! Susie transforms. Susie notices her arms is turning yellow. She transforms into a yellow alien. Her eyes turning purple. Chuck's eyes popped out of his head. What the hell? You're in. Susie raises her voice. I am what? I am what? Say it! Chuck, a creature, an alien. She looks at Chuck. I wanted to study a half alien, half human whose planet was destroyed by asteroids as a kid. Chuck gives her a wicked smile. There it is. Chuck doesn't stop staring at her. Oh, this cannot be happening again. We could use you as a weapon. As our secret weapon. She kicks Chuck so hard between his legs with her black high heels. With her black high heel shoes, Chuck groans. I will never work for you. She kicks him so much that he is bleeding between his legs. She lifts Chuck and throwing him out the window. She watches him fall. I guess you can't trust guys sometimes. She looks around the room. She looks at the file on the floor. See you picture of Susie Wells. Wanted, Veronica King, aka Susie Wells. Half alien, half human. DOB, July 20th, 1984. Place of birth, unknown. Girl next door was half alien, half human. Wanted. Cut to Interior Library, New Jersey day. The spy, aka Veronica King, by night, by day, Susie Wells, is a librarian strolling the cart down to the biography section. She notices that male patrons are looking at her. Different lives, same person. Susan, titled Lovely Me on the shelf. She looks at the Lovely Me title. I can't wait to see my name in print. She bends down to look at the Dennis Perrin book titled Mr. Mike, the life and work of Michael O'Donoghue. She looks at the cover. If I could finish my book. She holds the book in front of her. She sighs. She tried to focus on her job, found it that she couldn't. She couldn't stop thinking about her life, filled with adventure, comparing to her boring life. She looks down at her empty cart. Cut to interior study room, continuous. Susie pulls her cart into the room. She puts her hands on the table. Susie, my ex and enemy wanted me dead. I still can't shake it up. She even looks at the study room door, hoping that the librarians do not walk past the door. She looks at her phone. She watches the video. I don't think I should continue with a double life. I don't know how anybody does it. She leans back against the wall. I don't think I could do this spy work again. She looks at the study room door. She sits down on the chair. The next assignment I get, I'm going to tell them no. I'm not going to do this. Susie gets off the chair, putting her right hand on the table. It was only a one-time deal to make extra money. She holds the cart tight. 25,000 per assignment. She gets a beep in her pocket. She ignores the sound at first. Another beep. She takes her phone out of her pocket. Okay, geez. See you on phone. A map of California pointing to Los Angeles. A picture of a studio head of Sunshine Pictures, Max Powell. 60s, good, looking for his age, Susie. How does the agency know where I am? Susie begins to panic. I can't let anybody know about my other life. Help me! Help! I've been kidnapped! A Russian wants to take over the studio, he muffles. She watches the studio head all tied up to a chair in a small room in a disclosed location. She turns off the video. The studio head of Sunshine Studios is kidnapped? She doesn't look up. She groans. She couldn't think what to say at that moment. How am I going to say no? She holds her phone tight. I wanted to go to Los Angeles to make it in the movies, not save the studio head from the Russian kidnappers. Is it because of who I am? Have special abilities to save the studio head from death? There's a knock on the door. The librarian, 60s, gave Susie a look. Susie, the books are not going to put back themselves. Susie put the phone back in her pocket. I'm done. Cut to interior library continuous. Susie heads out of the study room, strolling an empty book cart out of the room. The head librarian crosses her arms. There are more books to stock. I am aware of that. Susie strolls past the head librarian. Susie takes a glance at the head librarian before heading to the sci-fi/fantasy section. All right, and I think we're going to pause there. So we're going to stop there for time purposes. Awesome. So first off, Susan, thank you for submitting. All right. So I would say what I really liked about that. So I think there's a couple things that are working for it. I think we do have a very clear character journey when I think about who our main character is. So I think clearly our character development, Susan, or I want to say what she has like her two personas, right? She has her day persona and then her night persona. Let's see, I want to say we have Veronica / Susie. So technically they're the same person. It's basically Superman, same thing like Superman, Clark Kent, right? Veronica King at night, Susie during the day. So it's the same character. I can tell you've definitely done a lot of work with character development. And I think Susie's core character development actually works. I actually think what we have right now is working for a character. I think the opportunities for this is actually a little bit, I'm like, ask myself world building. I think we're not far enough into the world yet for me to kind of determine if the world's fully fleshed out or not yet. It's kind of hard to say. I think the biggest opportunities for it are probably on the plot. I would say it's a bit of the plot and the dialogue. So I think those are the two things that are holding it back right now in terms of it getting to that next level. So let's dive into it because I think there were definitely some really good moments and I'd love to highlight them for you, Susan. All right, so let's go into here. So let's go. All right, so this is actually a really interesting setup when we think of this. Susie Wells, aka Veronica King, beautiful, young, tough. Susie / Veronica. So right now, Susie, okay, so first off, so I think there's definitely a couple of like formatting options or formatting things we can fix to help just clean up the script a little bit. So when we think about formatting, so Susie and Veronica is the same exact person, right? They are the same exact person. It's kind of interesting. I would actually look at scripts. I would look at something like Superman, or I would look at scripts that are done where it's the same identity. Or let's say Spider-Man. Spider-Man's the perfect example, right? he is Peter Parker by day, he's Spider-Man at night. But in the script, my guess is all of his lines are still cued as Peter Parker. Even though we know, right, Spider-Man Peter Spider-Man Peter Parker, all the lines in the script are probably framed as a Peter Parker. So I would just check that only for like a formatting perspective. So that way, if somebody reads it or they listen to it, or like let's say they're like it's an interested agent, I just don't want to chance them getting confused by it. Is the only thing. Let's see. There's one thing. Also, half alien, half human, alien spy. I love that. So half alien, half human. I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? What? She is determined to complete the mission. Only she kills them first. She keeps on climbing on the windows. She listens to the ambulance siren down onto the street. Let's see, wearing a tight black. So I think my challenge here is, right, so she is also half alien, half human, alien spy. So there are so many different types of things of what an alien is considered. And if you're looking at like a casting director is going to ask themselves, what does a half alien, half human look like? So right now, she's beautiful, young, tough, wearing a black tight knit bodysuit. So does she have like some alien features? Or is she just fully human and she's kind of in her like human form? Does she like switch back and forth as like human form, alien form? Or does she have like pointed like alien ears and like, oh, I hide the ears because I don't want people to know I'm human, or I don't want people to know I'm alien. So I think I would just I would describe that. Yeah, I think I would set that. You can say they're half alien, half human, but I would give that further description. So that way, the first image we get of her is this like, oh, that's really cool. This cool character. And then that way you pull them into the visual, especially for scripts, because scripts are very focused on visual and dialogue. Okay, and then let's see. So she keeps on climbing the window. So with this, I would just reframe this. So she is determined to complete the mission. So what you're doing a couple of things. I can tell you've probably worked on short stories, or not story, but stories before. So you're combining some elements from novels and stories into a script. When we think about a script, the only things that you want to put is what we can visually see. When we look at that, she is determined to complete the mission. How do we know she is determined? Technically, this is interiority right there. So you could actually reframe this. She climbs up. She climbs up the building. She climbs up the building, misses a step, and almost falls to her death. Right. And then I would add her dialogue here. Oh nope. Let's do this. Then I could add like a dialogue here of Susie, dialogue. This is just like a dialogue option. I know I'm not formatting it correctly. Susie, why did I take on this first mission? Why did I take on this first mission? Right. And then you could have this dialogue here. Actually, I could probably do this. That way it's just a little clearer for you. Why did I take on this first mission? There we go. So then you could do something like that. And then I think instead of telling us like this is her first mission, you can have this, right, is setting up, right? Now I know you do some dialogue right down here, which is setting up. So she keeps on climbing the windows. She listened to the ambulance signs down the street. Let's see, we're going down. And then, awesome. Thanks, Mark. Glad to have you here, my friend. Love it. Let's see, what do we got here? So how am I going to get the information without being killed? She takes a breath. So my question with this, this opening things is, who is she talking to? Right? So is this something like where she's just talking to herself? Is this like a character trait? Is this just like something that she does? This actually might be a little bit more effective if you did this as a voiceover, as a narration, because that's actually a very common trend for scripts, where we're starting it as like, okay, so this is, how am I going to know I got the information here? It all started with this. this is what happened that took me to this problem. My past life as a half alien, half human. Because right now she's basically climbing up the building. And the question I ask myself, if I'm watching this on the screen, my question is, why is she talking to herself? Right? Is there something wrong with her? Is she a crazy writer? Writers talk to themselves, right? Is it because she's an alien? So I think that would be the first problem to solve here, right? Like you can do it. I think you just have to bring the audience along in why is she doing it, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. And then it could be not believable because then the audience is like, well, why? Like, why? Because then it might feel like, oh, well, then the writer's just trying to tell this to me because they need to get information across. Like, for example, perfect example, Deadpool. For anybody who's seen Deadpool, Deadpool breaks the wall and talks to the audience all the time. But his character is set up that he breaks the wall to talk to the audience. Like that is his thing. So he can do that because that's like the shtick about his character, which is why it makes sense. So essentially the creator set it up that Deadpool breaks the fourth wall to talk to the audience. Yeah, I could tell. Yeah, I feel like it would be super strong as a voiceover, in all honesty. I think you could change some of these early I definitely feel like you could change some of these early dialogues to a voiceover. I think it'd be a little bit more effective, Susan. Let's see. And hey, what's up, Christina? You're like, my main genre is fantasy, but I like to delve into all the subgenres. I know you and me both, my friend. Always love my fellow fantasy writers out there. Let's see. She looks up on the computer desk. She types on the keyboard, keeping her eyes on screen. Let's see. So we get into the building, and then she gets into the computer in front of the computer desk. And the computer, she's obviously stealing information. The information will help stop the war in Iraq. I was like, okay. So that's interesting. This then makes me question, this makes me question if we're probably maybe in a previous time period when we were in the war in Iraq, or is it referring to modern day where we're at right now? So this is interesting. So this is some good character development, right? We're like, okay, she cares about helping people. So maybe she's a superhero alien. Hard to say. We're still too early on, but I like that, right? The information will help stop the war in Iraq. So I think these things can work because she's just getting the information from the computer. Maybe she's talking to herself. Or another idea, Susan, what if she was talking to someone, like she had like some of those, like maybe like a Bluetooth or a headset, and she had like a partner, right? And then that would actually make sense why she would be talking. Unless as the alien, like maybe her two personas, maybe they talk to her, or maybe that's like human half talks to the alien half, right? So I think you could totally set that up if you really wanted to keep all of her dialogue. That'd be another way to go about it. Let's see. She keeps having her eyes on the computer screen. She notices a needle heading over. She notices a needle heading over to her neck. She turns around, taking the needle away from the enemy's hand lightly. All right. So she keeps on having her eyes on the computer screen. Let's see. So we don't need this because we already know that she's looking. She listens to footsteps heading over their direction. Come on. Because she keeps on having her eyes on the computer screen. I think we already know this because we know that she's in front of the computer. She notices. So we wouldn't frame this as she notices. Yeah, see, I could totally tell. I actually had this same exact problem when I took a break from screenwriting and then went back to novels. You have so much interiority here, which I'm like, yeah, she's probably done some novels before, but it's really all good. The great thing is a lot of the interiority is easily fixed. That's the great thing. The thing that I always want to highly recommend is ask yourself this. With novels, we need interiority because we want to learn about the characters. In a screenplay, if I am saying something, can I visually see it? Can I visually see this action? So if I'm reading the script and I'm asking, can the audience visually see she notices a needle heading over to her neck? She notices. Yep. So we could see that the needle is heading over to her neck, but we don't necessarily see she notices. That would be obvious. So then I would put a needle, right? Because we don't need that notices. A needle appears a needle appears over her neck. A needle appears sticking into her neck, right? And now, right, you see that's just the visual, right? Perfect. I'm like, oh, wait, what's happening? Someone's about to attack her. She turns around, taking the needle away from the enemy's hand lightly. Now, I know you want to keep the enemy obscured because you don't want to introduce them yet, but with scripts, anytime you introduce a new character at all, you have to do a character setup for them, even if you want to keep them anonymous at first, and I'll show you how. So she turns around, taking the needle away from a hand. Let's see, needle away from the enemy. So because we don't know it's an enemy, right? So, and that's basically I feel like then that's the author. So what we'll say is she turns around, taking the needle away from a gloved hand. A gloved hand. And I think we can get away with that. I don't think we have to set them up yet. She turns around, taking the needle away from a gloved hand. The needle falls onto the floor. She gets off the chair. She climbs on top of the male enemy. She punches the male enemy in the face. He pulls touch of her hair. All right, so basically they fight. The needle falls on the floor. She gets off the chair, turning to face, and then you would do the character setup, right? Male enemy. Masked man in his masked man. Or I'll just masked and male enemy. So the name, and then what does he look like? And that's where you'd put there, right? Because we have to set him up regardless. You can actually frame him as male enemy when you first introduce him, and then add the name once he gets introduced in the next page. But we do have to have a setup for him, because from a casting director standpoint, like they need to know every single time a new character is introduced, and that's why it's capitalized when we introduce new characters and scripts. And then we have this cool fight. She climbs on top of the male enemy. She punches the male enemy in the face. He pulls strands of her hair. I was like, I'm pretty sure this was strands of her hair. Only 2 strands of hair come loose. And then we don't need to know that she looks at a man because they're already on screen, right? Only 2 strands. What the fuck? Chuck? And then this is great. This is such a great moment. Like, wait, what? Some masked guy tries to come kill her, and she knows who he is. So this is great. Chuck, masked, and then you would put masked man is revealed to be, or there's a couple ways you can go about it, but masked man is revealed to be Chuck, Susie's boyfriend, and another spy looks at her, right? So essentially what we've done is we've set up male enemy, right? Whoever, or I would just say use masked man because you use that. Masked man. Masked man is revealed to be Chuck, Susie's boyfriend, and another spy. Perfect. Oh, okay, cool. Now we know. So this was actually Chuck, and it's a clear setup. Another spy. Chuck is drop dead gorgeous. Beautiful. I love the setup for Chuck is another spy, and he's drop dead gorgeous. I'm like, ooh, I love that. That's an easy thing to cast. I can totally see this. We got cute, attractive, half alien, half human chick, and then we got gorgeous, this gorgeous other assassin. And then you kind of set up oh, okay, there's going to be some type of assassin love romance we got going on here. A type of guy that she could never get in high school. So once again, interiority, no interiority. If we cannot see it, if we cannot visually see it, it does not go in the script. Yeah. And if there's so much interiority that you feel like the story needs, then probably just make a short story or make a novel out of it. Let's see. Chuck is drop dead gorgeous guy ever. Let's see. Make sure he doesn't say anything. Yeah, so I would do that. Because then let's have the action speak for itself, right? You were supposed to kill me? Chuck nods. Did you date me? So, and this is good, right? So we're getting some good character development here. Did you date me? So Susie's voice trails off. Susie pulls back away from Chuck. You never loved me, did you? Okay, so I think my only question I would ask is why do they stop fighting? I have them coming here, and if he's trying to kill her, I think the only way he could stop, and this is why it could come across potentially comedic, because Chuck tries to kill her, he stops, and then it feels like you stop the action for them to talk. The only way you can stop the action is if she has him pinned to the ground, right? So let's say she has him pinned. I think this could work better if you have them continue to fight and they're talking in between fighting, right? You were supposed to kill me. Chuck nods, and punches her in the gut. Susie rolls away. Susie slides away. Slides. Susie dodges another punch. Did you date me so? And right, so we don't need her voice trail off. So actually, whenever we have things that affect the dialogue, the only time, yep, so you have it here. We would only use parentheticals when it affects the dialogue, right? Essentially, if we try to add things like that here, we're basically saying, actor, this is how I want you to say it. And we want to let the actors do their job of bringing the characters to life. So we only add the parentheticals when it's like absolutely necessary, or when the dialogue itself is not apparent or obvious what it needs to accomplish. So there's that. So yeah, and I think that's how I would fix this scene, because right now it could potentially come across comedic. And the reason why is because you stop the action to get the dialogue across. If you intersperse the action, keep the action going, action, dialogue, action, it will make it it'll make it work. So that way we feel like Chuck's still trying to kill her. You never loved me, did you? You loved me, then kill me. I would cut that. Yeah, and I think we get rid of that. I don't think we need that. You never loved me. Did you? Right. And then we could go here. Come on, you have to understand. And I would have Chuck say something like more romantic. Have Chuck be a little bit more romantic. Like he's trying to sway her. He's trying to play up his macho, like, oh yeah, baby, we're good. I'm just kidding. I don't want to kill you. Come on, you have to understand, gorgeous. You have to understand, Gora, and then give him something fun to say. She tries to hold back the tears. We don't need that because we already know they're fighting. Yeah, and then I think I would play into that fun part. Susie transforms. Susie notices her arms is turning yellow, right? So once again, she can't notice because we are in a script, right? We only want to see the visualization. Susie transforms. Her arms turn yellow, which is cool. I'm like, oh, okay, awesome. She's becoming this cool alien chick. I want to know more. She transforms into a yellow alien. Her arms turn yellow. She transforms into a yellow alien. Her arms turn yellow. Susie transforms. So I would actually go this into her alien form. Right. So then from a casting director, they're like, okay, that's clear. Alien form. Now the casting director is like, okay, now we need to make another costume, or we need to CGI this character. What does alien costume look like? Right. And then we can give them some clues. Her arms turn yellow. Her legs. Let's see. Her arms and legs turn yellow. Her body shrinks and her eyes glow purple. There we go, right? So we just give enough, and then we can let the script, if when it gets picked up, we can let them decide how they want to bring that to life. Chuck's eyes popped out of his head. We don't need to do this because we already know Chuck is going to be like, what the? I would let the dialogue speak for itself because that's the power of a script. Chuck, what the hell? And we already know. I could even almost consider doing like a parenthetical here of in terror to kind of set up the tension. Susie raises her voice. I am what, right? And I think we would do this in a parenthetical with raised voice. I am what? And I would just go here to emphasize that. Say it. I would then include action here for Chuck. Give Chuck an action to play scared. So that would heighten the tension. Awesome. And I think that would fix the tonal problem of it, so that way it doesn't come across comedic. I feel my gut tells me that you want this to be like a cool opening sci-fi action assassin thing with this alien. So then you just want to make sure the action match it, or the actions continue to match the dialogue. Otherwise, if the actions don't match the dialogue, then it potentially has the side effect of coming across funny, which is not your intended effect. And this is great, right? We think Chuck is like going to be scared, but then you're subverting expectations, and he's actually super into it. We're like, wait, what? Does he have like an alien fetish? Like, what the heck? Weird guy has an alien fetish. Oh no, okay, he's some type of government dude, and wants to research her. All right, cool. So he probably knows that aliens exist then, which makes sense. It's all good. She kicks him so much that he is bleeding between his legs. Ah, God, it's painful. It's painful. I love it though. Like, cool, badass alien chick. She lifts Chuck and throws him out the window. We don't need to show her watching him fall, but we could say she lifts Chuck and throwing him out the window. His cries penetrate the silence until it's cut short. Right? His cries penetrate the silence until it's cut short, because then we can have the audio of it. Now, sometimes with audio, we can sometimes italicize if we want to do audio or sound effects, but that's a subjective. It's like a personal choice. Thorben, this is good. She looks around the room. She looks at the file on the floor. Right, and we want to move away from the looks language, because we already know that she's here. We want to give it from what it looks like on the screen. A file, a lone file, lays on the floor. Let's see. And then I think we would I forgot what the right screenshot is for this. There's actually a heading for this where I think it's close up. So I think you would say close up of file. So then we're letting them know close up of file, CU file, CU picture. I don't know what CU stands. Oh, close up picture. Oh, I think that is close up. Oh yeah, I think that is close up. That's funny. You say, okay, you did that right. That is close up. Close up a file. That's just me because I haven't done scripts in a while. Close up. A casting director would most likely get that. But I think just to be safe, just so you don't you just don't want to chance confusing anyone. Most likely, director should get that though. I would just say close up, and I think you capitalize it, but don't quote me on that. I would just double check. I would Google what the right formatting is for close up. Close up of file. Close up on file. Close up pictures of Susie Wells. Perfect. The girl next door was half alien, half human. All right. So then I would include this as, I would put details, right? I would put that in the file. So that way that's part of the thing. And then we go to the New Jersey, or the library bit. Now, technically you've already introduced us to Susie. So you don't actually have to set her up again, but you can say the spy, aka Veronica King by Night. So you don't actually have to set this up because we were just introduced to her. So I would actually recommend that you pick, I would say recommend pick one of her personas to refer to her by. So that way the audience is clear who the character is. And I would just I would, if I were you, I would just go look at superhero scripts and see how they refer to characters, Spider-Man, Hulk, Iron Man, any of the superhero scripts, and see how they refer to the characters when they're in their normal day mode and then when they're in their superhero mode. And I would just copy that format because that's a well-known format. And that'd be my recommendation, because I don't think you have to set her up twice, but you do have to make it clear that there's two different personas. And that's how I would go about that. It's been a while since I've looked at one of those scripts. So I just don't remember. Yep. And then there's just cutting down on interiority. She tried to focus on her job, found out that she couldn't stop thinking about her life filled with adventure, right? And then it's like, if we're watching this on a screen, how do we know she's thinking about her life comparing to her boring life, right? So then instead we could do this. She picks, she actually, you kind of actually already accomplished this, right? She holds a book in front of her and sighs, right? That accomplishes it. She sighs and looks out the window. And looks out the window. Yeah, Susan, you know what? I could actually totally see this as a dark comedy. Like, if you really wanted to play into the dark comedy aspect of it, you could totally play this as a dark comedy, right? Especially because you had this, like, the gruesome elements to it with her, like, kicking him between the legs and he's, like, bleeding profusely. You could totally play into that. And I was like, because I think that would actually work well for this genre. When I think about this genre, half alien, so it's supernatural, sci-fi, it's spy. It sounds like it is spy, supernatural, espionage. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. You could play into the dark comedy. I would look at shows that have a non-human protagonist and see which shows are doing well in that format. The only ones that I know that have human characters tend to be comedies. So I'm not too familiar. I would go look at shows on like Sci-Fi Network, see if what shows are being done with alien protagonists, and kind of just not like copy, but just research, right? See what people are responding to right now in this day and age. And that's how I'd go about it. Yeah, and then I think a lot of the notes for this library scene is same. I would say the same notes from the previous scene, just cutting down like, why is Susie talking to herself, right? Give her somebody to talk to. Yeah, I would say give her someone to talk to. Unless, like, you could do the cool thing. Maybe she has two personas. Maybe human persona has to talk to the alien persona. That's badass. I love that, right? That'd be a cool way to do it. So she's talking to herself because her alien persona is like the voiceover cool narration thing. There's a couple of different directions you could go, but I think that's how you'd fix it. So yeah, so I think that's all the feedback I have for you, Susan. Interiority and the dialogue talking to herself would be the biggest fixes for me. Let's say, I know we got some really great feedback here. Yeah, that would be cool. During the building climbing, let's maybe have her show something that she is an alien, then have her comment on it, this inconvenience. As she's climbing the building earlier in the scene, maybe she grows an extra arm or something. Like, that could be cool. Maybe she falls and like something catches her and it's some type of alien thing. That would be a cool intrigue. I think that'd be awesome. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Obviously the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie original one was good. The recent Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Donald Glover and the other one, I forgot who his partner was, got a lot of attention. I think that was last year. I think that got a lot of award attention. I haven't seen it, but that is a good reference. Total Recall is an absolutely great movie. Absolutely. 100%. I completely agree. Here's the thing. You could actually, no, wait, change my mind. Master, so you could go two directions, right? You could go direction one. The audience needs to know that she's an alien because the alien thing is like the shtick. It's like a funny thing, or it could be like a dark thing, right? She falls, an extra arm reaches out and grabs her. Okay, cool. That's part of the thing. Or you use the fact that she's an alien as a tension point and you don't reveal it until something's about to happen to her, right? Until the guy's about to kill her. Oh, and then she turns into the alien. So you could go either direction. I think it's just personal preference. The science is the only thing is going to be penetrating for a while. Oh my God. Susan, please use that line. If you go comedy, that's actually hilarious. As she watches him fall out the window, silence is the only thing is going to be penetrating for a while. She spits out the window. Oh man. Yeah, that part was a little over the top, which made me think it was a dark action comedy. Yeah, I love dark action comedies too. I think this could work very well as a dark action comedy. I kind of got that as well. I definitely kind of got the Mystique vibe from her. Awesome. So once again, Susan, very, very great work, my friend. Thank you so much for submitting. I think there's some really cool opportunities in it, but I think you've set up a really cool world. So I'm definitely really looking forward to see how it comes along. Good luck with the revisions, and it's my hope that you play into the dark comedy side of it, because that could be a lot of fun. Awesome. So the next story we're going to be hopping into is Nils. Well read. Good night. So Nil submitted a short story. If you're here, I know I saw you hop in earlier, my friend. I'm going to be hopping into your story in just a moment. But for those of you who are new to the community, you should come join us in the WriteNow Discord. We have a very, very active Discord where we have writers who are chatting and active in it every day. Whether you just want to join like the regular writing conversation, I just added a meme section, which is fun. There's areas for sharing your story. If you have a writing service, you can offer writing services. We have games. There's a lot of ways for you to interact with other writers. So highly, highly recommend. I'll drop this down in the comments. It's also down in the YouTube description. Come join us in the WriteNow Discord right now. That's what I got. So definitely, yeah. If you're looking for like motivation, it's a really great community. All right, my friends. Woof, man, I let me give my breath a moment to recover for just a second before we hop into the next short story. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you're just joined us and you want feedback on your story, the description or the link, the submission form is down in the YouTube description, also posted in the comments. Highly recommend submit your story, or let's say maybe you're like, hey, it's not ready yet. Submit it once it's ready as soon as possible. Our next story and critique show, episode 33, will be Saturday, December 21st. So it'll be in a couple weeks, but I generally tend to do the critique show a couple times a month to try to give writers as much opportunity to help improve their story. So definitely, that'd be awesome. All right, my friends. So that's if you want to submit. And we did the Discord queue. Man, how are you guys feeling about the story so far? I feel like I'm in kind of a sci-fi mode. Actually, no, I have a better question. What is your preferred genre? I'm so curious. I like have to know, what is your guys' preferred genre? If you had to pick one, what is the genre where you're like, this is like my love, my heart, my soul? I would love to know. I'm going to throw up that question because that's actually a really good question. All right. So I just threw that up as a Q&A over in YouTube. If you're here with us on YouTube, I would love to hear what your preferred genre is. You guys all know me. I'm a fantasy nerd at heart, but I have a lot of preference for a lot of different genres. Fantasy is definitely a lot of fun. Hey, what's up, Megan, my fellow fantasy friend? Welcome, my friend. So glad to have you over here. I'm like, do we have any other fantasy friends? I think I know. I saw somebody mentioned fantasy earlier. Clearly, we've had some sci-fi vibes, and I don't actually know the genre of this next one. Other than that, this next one is a short story. So I guess we're about to find out. All right. Okay. So the Fellowship of Fantasy Friends. I love it. we're starting our Fellowship of the Ring. Oh man. All right. So I think I'm ready. Let me cue up Nil's story here. All right, Nil, if you're here in the chat, just say I. Otherwise, you'll catch it on the replay. Well read. Good night. A short story by Nil. All right, and let me pull up a Nil's piece. All right, perfect. So I am all ready on my end. Okay, so I have Nil's piece set up here. Ooh, that's excellent. Now, I was just about to get that. So you said the prompt was a book you couldn't put down. It's actually a really good prompt. Let's see. Let me pull up the submission. Okay, so the background of this, it was a 500-word contest. The prompt was a book you couldn't put down. Due to the word count, I was more overt with the setup and theme. I wanted to play with the red/white color scheme. In the short story, there's a book, and I described the book as fantastical. There's illustrations that move. Okay, so you're. It sounds like you're trying out a couple of things. Gotcha. So it sounds like what you want to know is, does it work as a story? It sounds like, is it clear? Because it wasn't picked to go into the contest, but it sounds like you had a lot of fun writing it. All right. So I think that's the biggest ask from Nil, is what is kind of like, does it make sense and is it clear to us? So we'll definitely get to try it out. Clearly, we've really been playing on the contest vibe lately. Yep. Experimental literary fiction and sci-fi. That's as narrow as it gets. All right, my friends. So let's do it. Okay. I am all ready. Well read. Good night. Elise knew everyone at her mom's funeral, except the librarian with the red and white book. They whispered, "It's a guide to anyone's diary in the world. Be warned, read to the end, or you'll never smile again." The young girl didn't believe in magic. Do I need a smile without happiness? What good is a moon with no earth? Opening the book, she didn't see words, just illustrations of a red and white knight standing still. A picture book? What's the use? In a blink, text flashed beside red. "I'll protect you." Curious, sir. Elise inspected for trick ink. "Who? Me?" She blurred back. More red text appeared. "Yes, princess." Letters slowly printed next to white, but nervously, Elise turned the page before it finished. Every time a page flipped, the night drawings came to life. The drawings of Red raised his shield, decorated with a griffin, and punched White's face, who fell to a knee, badly bruised. Elise winced. Font gradually materialized by White's shield emblazoned with a canary, her mom's favorite bird. "My lady, I bring news from Mom." "Charge!" popped up in red caps. "No! Red, stand down! White, flee!" Elise shouted and flicked several pages. A flipbook of animations showed Red as a fierce lancer on a galloping horse. White's picture became crisscrossing sketch lines that reformed as an image of the knight knocked down, sitting upright and bleeding. Elise ached. White's lethargic script became visible. "Mom said you're too beautiful to be sad." "Where's Mom's diary?" asked the orphan. "Does it mention our fight?" Instantaneously, "This is the end," interrupted in bold red. "White, don't quit," Elise pleaded. Sliced by paper cut, she dropped the book, which fell in a spiral. Red swung a mace overhead, striking White's shoulder, and tumbled him sideways to the ground with a broken arm. Elise twinged. White struggled. "I'm sorry, lady. Red is too strong. I won't survive, and time is running out. Turn the page. Don't lose the joy your smile brings." Elise despaired. "No, you'll die! Please, I never apologized. Tell Mom sorry. I can't laugh without her." "Wait, I know. I'll restart the book and guide you to defeat Red." White spoke solemnly. "We can't always go back. Mom knows what's in your heart. Your memories together are her diary. It's a privilege to sacrifice to a queen. Elise's lips tightened under the curse. Thanking the angel through tears, she turned the last page, barely able to speak. Red swung a sword at White's neck, who staggered to his feet, and at the final moment raised the canary shield overhead. On impact was a giant smoke cloud. Once cleared, only a small pink canary remained, which grew bigger until 3x times larger than the devil. Red screeched. The bird meeped, then pecked his helmet, knocking him into the ground up the neck. The canary winked, like Mom, saying, I love you. Elise clutched the book to her heart and laughed like royalty. Aw, that was actually really sweet. That was a really sweet. I love that. All right, now. So once again, that was actually a very cool short story. That was definitely a huge swing to do something that was very, very experimental. All right, so let me think. What did I like about it? So I loved what you did with it. I think the idea and the concept behind it is actually super cool and very intriguing. If I'm pulling back from an overall perspective and I think about what is the core story? The core story is the girl accepting love from her mom. She has a book. This book basically has characters and things that are coming to life. And it's basically these characters are fighting each other. Yeah, and that's really the core of it. Girl reads a book, or girl is reminded of her mom's love by reading this book where characters, where red and white come to life. So I think the core idea of it is actually a very simple idea. Now, the execution of it is where it's very intriguing, right? Essentially, you're playing around with a lot of different style and structure elements to bring the reader on a very unique journey, which I actually find very, very intriguing. I think what works right now, and I think what's actually really interesting, I love the character development. The character development is awesome. I think that the different characters, and then introducing Pink, the pink canary at the end, was super cool. I'm like, okay, cool. There's the mom's love. I'm down for that. I think the world is very simple. You were obviously limited to 500 words, so that's always the challenge, right? Where do I add or delete words? So I think you did fine with the world building with the amount of time that you had. I think the hardest thing with this, Nil, and I think what's holding it back is that you're introducing a very, very, I wouldn't say difficult, but you're introducing a concept that you don't have that much time to explain. So, and this could have just been me from the live reading. When I was in the beginning of it, I didn't understand what was going on. But then by the time I got to the middle, I'm like, oh, okay, the characters are the characters are basically the colors. And I was like, okay, cool, I got that. But like in the beginning, like that kind of took me a second to get onto, because you're essentially relying on color scheme to basically bring it to life. Aw, thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for the super thanks. Much appreciated, my dude. All right, so let's dive into the story itself, because I think I'm trying to go back and forth on if I think that this worked as a short story. I think the story is very effective. I just think you have to spend a little bit more time on setting up the style, because it's actually a really unique style, and I'm so intrigued by it. It's, once again, you're taking a big swing with something unique, and I ask myself, is it tangible? Is it possible to accomplish that in the small amount of word choice that you have? So I like that you set up the stakes are pretty clear from the beginning. It's the girl has lost her mom, and it's basically a reconcile with her mom's death, which is actually like that's very straightforward. That's moving. So I think what I would do now, I think if I were to fix this, because you have you're setting up some really interesting concepts. Elise knew everyone at her mom's funeral. except the librarian with the red and white book. I would leave this as the beginning because let's just focus on characters. But we want to focus on the Elise's core character journey, except the librarian with the red and white book. I would almost have the first sentence like add something else to it and focus solely on Elise's character journey, because like that at heart is the core stakes of Elise lost her mom. And this is a story of grief. It's a story of she's escaping into this cool fantasy magic book that helps her come to terms with her mom's death. That is powerful. It's a very powerful thing. So I think the opening sentence should focus on the character's core journey. Elise knew everyone at her mom's funeral, but she only wanted her mom. I mean, like, do something that's like straightforward. I know you can word it better than I can. Elise knew everyone at her mom's funeral, but she only wanted, but she didn't care. But she didn't care. But she didn't care. Elise only wanted wanted to hug her mom. Right. So I think I would do something like that, something that just like sets it up, because that's the character journey. So then that way we can, okay, that's the first thing we're focused on. And then let's see, then introduce the book, right? She looked down in her hands, except the librarian. She knew no one. Elise knew everyone at her mom's funeral, but she didn't care. Elise only wanted to hug her mom. And then I think you would set up the librarian with the red and white book. Okay. So they whispered, "It's a guide to anyone's diary in the world. Be warned, read to the end or you'll never smile again." Which I actually like. I like when we experiment with things, and I think it can work. So technically you're experimenting with two different styles, right? So the first style is using red or using colors as a character name, right? That's one style. Color as a character name. Second style, using font choice as part of the narrative, which is very intriguing to me. The challenge with that is you're trying two different things and you have to get the reader on board with each separate thing. And you have such a limited amount of time to do that. It just makes it difficult. That's all that it is. Only because you were limited by word choice. Now, I think, Neil, if you want to take the story and keep working with it, you could absolutely accomplish it and make it easier when you're not limited to that 500 word count. You absolutely could. So I think what it is you just need to make sure that the reader is clear that the colors of the names are characters. Okay. So let's see. And then I would set up the librarian with the red book bit, and I think then that would be fine. He whispered, except the librarian with the red, they whispered, "It's a guide to anyone's diary in the world. Be warned, read to the end or you'll never smile again." So then my question here is, who is they, right? So is they the book characters? Because we haven't set it up yet. So like they whispered, "It's a guide to anyone's diary in the world." Except the librarian with the red and white book. So I think you have to set up, if they is from the book, you have to make it clear that the book is whispering to her, right? Whispers, I would rather go whispers arose from within the book's binding. Oh, that's kind of cool. All right. So now because I'm pretty sure the whispers are from the I'm pretty sure the whispers are the these characters. And I think that just makes it a little clearer. Okay, so now we're cemented. Girl has grief. Girl got the strange book. The book is whispering to her. What the heck? I want to learn about the book now. And I think then that gives a clearer setup. And now we know these whispers are coming from the book. It's a book. It's a guide to anyone's diary in the world. Be warned. Read to the end or you'll never smile again. You know what's interesting, Neil, is you have such a way with words and language. I almost want this to be a little more poetic because you have such a great use of language. This like feels like there should be like, these should almost be like rhyming in a sense. Because it kind of adds this like kind of childlike feel, but it's just a subjective suggestion on your part. But something about this makes me think like, be warned, read to the end. Let's be warned, read to the end or never smile, read end, bend, den, something that rhymes with end. Be warned, read to the end, or choose to never mend. Like something to that extent. I think this dialogue poetry would actually play very well to this setting. Never smile again. Yeah, I agree. It's a partial rhyme. I feel like you could have it rhyme even more though. I think you could play into it and have something that's instead of it being near, having like an identical rhyming scheme. But that's just me. That's just a subjective thing. Let's see. The young girl didn't believe in magic. Do I need a smile without happiness? What good is a moon with no earth? And I love that. This is so cool, right? And I think if you differentiate their dialogue with making this more poetic, and then making her be like childlike innocence, the young girl didn't believe in magic. Instead of the narrator telling us that, do I need a smile without happiness? Let's see. The young girl didn't believe in magic because of her mom's death, right? So that's why. Do I need a smile without I would almost think that this like might work better for dialogue. Do I need a smile without happiness? What good is a moon with no earth? What good is a moon with no earth? Do I need a smile without happiness? What good is a moon with no earth? Do I need a smile without happiness? That makes sense. This first part makes sense. What good is a moon with no earth? It sounds cool. I just don't know what it means. This is the only thing. It sounds cool. I don't know what it means. So I think I would choose something that relates to the mom. Like I would rather you be like the young girl, like who needs or like magic sucks or magic. Do I need a smile without happiness? What good is magic when mom? What good is magic when mom can't come back? Because I think tying it in back into the mom is what's important, right? The girl only cares about her mom, right? She wants her mom. And based on her age, we get that she's kind of young. And I think always tying it back into the mom as much as possible would be a really good start. And then opening the book. And then I think if you have them incentivize with another poetic whisper, that being like, turn the open the cover, mom, and then do something that kind of like a trick or luring them in that's kind of using the mom. I think that would be the intrigue, right? If she doesn't believe in magic, then why doesn't she just toss the book in the river, right? Why doesn't she just like, all right, who cares about the book? I want my mom. And I think if you have these characters use the mom as kind of like a hook or a bait, I think that incentivizes her to read the book, especially because she doesn't believe in magic. Opening the book, she didn't see words, just illustrations of a red and white knight standing still, which that is so cool. I love that opening image, a picture book. What's the use? I wouldn't do that. I would let us... because that's really her interiority. I would go opening the book. She doesn't see words, just illustrations of a red and white knight standing still. Opening the book, she didn't see words, just illustrations of a red and white knight standing still. Perfect. I love that. In a blink, text flash beside red. So to make this, okay, so because essentially what you're doing is you're setting up the structure for this. The reason I got lost is because it took me a second. It took me a couple but just a couple beats to be like, okay, red is the character and the character is speaking to her from the book. Now, I think if you've set it up that the book is whispering to her and you just make that clear, I think it makes this part easier of catching the reader. Because once again, short stories especially, you do not want to lose the reader, right? You have such an finite amount of time, like things have to make sense immediately. Whereas if this was a longer story, you would have time to dig into it. Oh my God, I love that. I absolutely, I was like, Curiouser. My first question was like, wait, does Curiouser, is that a line? But then I'm like, no, that reminds me of something. I love that. I love that so much. No, that's why this has such an Alice in Wonderland vibe. This definitely has an Alice in Wonderland vibe. That totally makes sense now. I would play into that now. I would do even more references because this totally has an Alice in Wonderland vibe. I actually really like that. I really, really like that concept. Of which, of course, the book, I always think the books are Alice in Wonderland or looking through the Looking Glass is a much better book than the visual versions of it. But yeah, completely agree. Elise even sounds like Alice. And I think that's intentional, which is fun. Open the cover, incentivize. So I would incentivize with the poetic whisper, just illustrations of a red. That's great. In a blink, text flashed beside red. I'll protect you. All right. So then what I'm asking myself is, do we always have, all right. So you're going to play around with the font. So to make things easier, I would, in a blink, text flashed beside red. And you're basically using this red, more red text appeared. So essentially you're starting, since you set them up as a red and white knight, I would almost keep them, and I think this would make it a little easier. I would keep them as red knight. I think that just makes it a little clearer for the reader. I would go red knight. In a blink, text flash beside red knight. I'll protect you. Curious, sir. Elise inspected for trick ink. Who, me? She blurted out. Yeah, I mean, I think that could work. Curious, sir. Elise. I get the blurting. I get that, but I think because the focus of this is we want to understand this, we need to understand the color structure. I would less focus on a second, so that way we can make sure that the reader is clear what this color structure, what's happening. In a blink, text flash beside red knight, I'll protect you. Cursor Elise inspected for trick ink. I wouldn't even have her speak. It is cool. Don't get me wrong. It is cool, but I would, in Cursor at least inspected for trick ink, only so we can make sure that we are absolutely clear. I know. I know, which I love too. Such an Alice, like that's why I absolutely love this story. And I actually, Nil, I really do hope that you do more with this and you expand upon some of these elements. And I think this could definitely, I think if you make it clear for the reader what these mechanics are that you're trying, this could definitely win a contest. More text, more red text appeared. Yes, princess. Now I think the only challenge with making the other character white all right, so we made it up like this is clear for red knight. Red knight, when red knight speaks, his text is red. Okay, that's clear. Let's see. More text appeared. Yes, princess. Letters slowly printed next to white. But nervously at least turn the page before it finished. Okay, so then we're skipping that. Every time a page flipped, the night drawings came to life. So essentially what you're doing is we're now setting up for the second thing. I would, and I think, Neil, just to make it clear, I would almost recommend, I do like the idea of red and white, because especially Alice in Wonderland, right? Red and white are very thematic. The only problem with white is then whenever white speaks, white has to be in a white font. What you're kind of doing is gray. I think from a color perspective, to make it work, I would make white another color. And I think it's specifically for the coloring of it. I think making it another color would make it stand out, like red and green, red and blue. I understand why you want to go white, but from the color aspect of it, I think making it a different color will serve the color idea just better. It'll make it stronger because you want to make sure that the reader is clear that every single time there is red dialogue, that's red knight. Every single time there's another color dialogue, that's the other knight. Letters slowly printed next to white knight. And I think setting up that does make it clear. I mean, do they have to be knight? Do I have to say that they're knight? You're essentially saying white and red. In a blink, text flash beside red knight. I'll protect you. Yeah, I think when you refer to them, I think keeping them as knight is just clearer. So then whenever they speak, oh, okay, red dialogue, always red knight. Cool. Letters slowly printed next to white knight. And I would have her turn the page, but I would have white knight start to speak. And then in whatever color that you want. Don't trust, and I would just cut off, right? Oh, no, that's ampersand. And then I would cut off. I would change this, make this a, no, we got to change the color of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. You can. Yeah. And there's the problem with white, right? White's just going to be hard to see. Essentially, it's kind of closer to gray is what you're doing. But I think you would just change. I think just change the color of White Knight would be my suggestion. And then this way, if you set up, kind of hard to see, but if you set that up, that, all right, this color text is always White Knight, then at least turns the page. By the time the reader gets here, the reader should be clear. Red text, Red Knight, white text, White Knight. Cool. Awesome. Move on, because you're about to introduce the second mechanic, right? So I need to make sure the reader understands this. We get clear. Every time a page flipped, perfect. Elise turns a page. Every time a page flipped, the Nite drawings came to life. Okay, so then now we're playing around with font, right? So essentially the font is the actions that are happening in the book. Cool, I'm so down for that. The drawing of Red Knight, raised a shield decorated with a griffin, and punched White Knight's face, who fell to a knee, badly bruised. Perfect, Elise winced. Font gradually materialized by White's shield, emblazoned with a canary, her mom's favorite bird. My lady, font gradually materialized by White's shield, emblazoned with a canary. I wouldn't go font. I would just say words, because font, I get that you're playing around with the font, but to make it just easy enough for the reader, I would say text gradually materialized by White's shield. I would even say white text gradually materialized by White's shield, emblazoned with a canary, her mom's favorite words. My lady, I bring news from mom. Oh, perfect. So this is technically, we're going towards the midpoint of the story. Charge popped up in red caps. No, red, stand down. If White is speaking, I would keep all of White's. No. Yeah, I think to make it clear, I would make this olive White Knight, right? So I would always make, that was the wrong one. That was highlighting. I would make this all of White Knight, right? Or whatever color you want to go with. A charge popped up in red caps. Perfect. No, stand down. All right, cool. We know that's White Knight. So we don't need to determine that. White, flee. Now, I think the hard part is when red and white speak to each other. That's technically the only times where when they use each other's names. That's what I mean. When they use each other's names, then technically you're keeping their name in that color, which, I mean, I guess that makes sense, but then that could confuse the reader. So I would say charge popped up in red caps. No, stand down. I wouldn't refer in their dialogue. I wouldn't have White Knight use Red Knight's name or Red Knight use White Knight's name. So that way you just don't confuse the reader, to keep the color structure the same. No, stand down. White, flee. And I would instead use flee rogue, or just something like that. And then if this is in red, whoever is speaking, perfect. That's Red Knight. Now we know that's Red Knight. Elise. Oh, no, that last part was Elise. Perfect. Flee, rogue, Elise shouted and flicked several pages. Perfect. Awesome. And then that makes that clear. And then I think that just makes it clearer, right? Red Knight, White Knight. Beautiful. A flipbook of animations showed Red as fierce as a fierce lancer on a galloping horse. And I think you can stick to the Red Knight as the narrator. I think that's fine. Red Knight as a fierce lancer on a galloping horse. White Knight's picture became crisscrossing sketch lines that were formed as an image of the knight knocked down, sitting upright and bleeding. Perfect. Elise ached, and I think that works because you're keeping that with the action. White's lethargic script became visible. Mom said, "You're too beautiful to be sad." You know what would actually be more interesting? I would say, like, instead of okay, well, let me think. Right. So to keep the naming structure, if Elise is using the The only problem with changing the color text in Elisa's dialogue is right now the color text is connected to when it shows up in the book. So now the reader's clear on that. If you use the color text in Elisa's dialogue, it potentially pulls the reader out because we're like, wait, I thought it was just happening in the dialogue. Then it makes the reader potentially feel like, okay, well, now I feel like the narrator's trying to talk to me. So I would say there's two ways. Either refer to them, I wouldn't color code these. My Nite, don't quit. I would either not color code these. That's one way. Or have Elisa, maybe she can draw into the book, right? Elisa drew onto the page. Elisa wrote with her finger, the orphan wrote onto the page. My white knight, don't quit. I think that would be another way you could get around that. So that way you just keep it clear for the reader. Slice by paper cut. Perfect. And then if she's playing with the book, she cuts her paper. That was great. This is our midpoint right here. She dropped the book, which fell in a spiral. Red swung a mace. This is fine because now we're back in the book again. This is clear. Red swung a mace overhead. Perfect. At least twinged. White struggled. I'm sorry, my lady. The white knight. I would go the white knight struggled. Yeah, the white knight struggled, and then you would make these black. And I know that's capitalized. That's fine. I'm just showing that. Sorry, lady. Yep, that's perfect. And I'm pretty good with the rest of it. I think once the reader is clear enough on these styles that you're trying now, I think then the rest of the story it works pretty well. Elisa's lips tied under the curse, thanking the angel through the tears. The problem is now with the angel, I'm not sure who the angel is. Mom knows what's in your heart. Your memories together. It's a privilege to sacrifice to a queen. Thanking the angel through tears, she turned the last page barely able to peek. So is White Knight an angel? And I think if White Knight is an angel, then you have to set that up. White Knight turned into an angel. Otherwise, you chance confusing the reader because like, wait, I thought only White Knight was in the white text, right? Who's the angel, right? So you can do that, or maybe angel's another character, but you have to set up this next character. I would almost recommend introduce whatever angel character is with another color of text. I think that would work well. And then pink is good. The devil does make sense to be in red, but I would on impact was a giant one. Red swung a sword at White's neck, whose tiger's fin at the front raised the canary shield. On impact was a giant smoke cloud. Once cleared, only a small pink canary remained, which grew bigger until 3 times larger than the devil. Only use red if it's referring to the Red Knight. Otherwise, it chances confusing the reader. If this is another character, use another color. But I think the canary was perfect. The canary is like a mom reference. Like, I love that. Sweet. That's what I got for you, my friend. Excellent work. I loved what you tried with that. I do love it when writers try different styles of I really love it when writers try like experimental fiction or experimental literary fiction, whatever you want to call it. And I think it is cool. I think you just have to spend more work setting it up, making sure the readers brought along is always the challenge. I completely agree. And it sounds like the community was enjoying it as well. No, I saw Eli had some really, really great recommendations here. She lost the gravitational center of her world. There's definitely some great lines. I got the labyrinth. I got a little bit of labyrinth as well. But Alice in Wonderland has such a labyrinth vibe in it once she's in Wonderland, which I love. I was saving on words, and that makes sense, right? Because you were limited in 500 words. And I think once again, Neil, the challenge is when you take on something that's very something that you have to set the readers up for, and that just creates its own challenge, right? You have such a limited amount of space to introduce not one, but 2 advanced concepts that readers just aren't familiar with. It's that more than anything else. I used it as a pronoun, that white and red knight stuff, good versus evil, but I see the confusion. Yep. Tried to be lighthearted at the end. Silly red knight gets pecked. Thanks again. Yeah, awesome. Once again, I think the story works. I think once you just clean up the mechanics and you clean the setup up, I think I actually think this story has potential to win contests because it's really clever. And I think if you tie in as many references to Alice in Wonderland or looking through the looking glass as much as possible, you'll have a lot of success there. So you should definitely try again and then submit to another contest. Awesome. So that was wonderful. So with that being said, thank you so much for sharing that, Nil. Our next one we're going to be moving on to is Crystals. Mary, I got yours up next. You put it as Crystals WT under the title. So I was like, Crystals, working title. Crystals working title. That makes sense. I was like, what does WT stand for? Yeah, that makes sense. So I know Crystals is your working title right now. It's a light fantasy. So I'm going to be pulling yours up. But in the meantime, don't forget to share this with a friend. The more writers we bring to the community, the more types of stories, the more types of feedback, the more types of great discussion that we can bring to the community. And the more that we share, the more that we can try to help other writers, right? I want to help other writers and make writing more accessible because I love writing. And I want to help so many writers out there who really struggle with the process. So tap that share button and don't forget to share this with a friend. All right, my friends, thank you so much. And that's going to bring us into the next story, into Mary's story. All right. Oof. All right, take my breather for a second. How's everybody doing? I was like, I always love doing the story reading. And I think what I really enjoy is that we get such a variety of stories in these critique streams. All right. Beautiful, my friends. So we absolutely got that. I love it. So we got the crystals. The next one I think I saw a couple more submissions came through. By the way, awesome. Love it. So I've queued up the submissions. We're going to see how far we can get. All right. So I have Mary's queued up. I was like, oh, I just realized I think I still have the what was that? I think I still have the timer, not that. All right, perfect. So let's go this, and Mary's story is here. All right, so we got the next section of our crystals with young Jasper and Danessa and Mole. Oh, Mary, I've really been wanting to know what's been I've really wanted to read the next section of this. I have loved seeing Jasper, Danessa, and Mole come into life. Absolutely. We all know that my vote goes on Mole being the cool character, and then there's that Nite character. I forgot what his name was that I was kind of liking as well. I want Batty Old Woman to come back eventually. All right, so we got the crystals. Now let me read. Let's see. All right. So for those of you who don't know, Crystals is a young adult light fantasy. It's about twins and crystal magic, and it kind of sounds like your goal here or your question is, does this chapter feel too long? So that's the question that you're posing to the community. Does this chapter feel too long in what it's trying to accomplish? Let's see. For those of you who haven't checked out previous parts of Mary's story, we've gone through previous parts of Crystals. Previous chapters on it. I want to say we started for a while. I want to say, Mary, I think you started this back in summer or maybe end of spring earlier this year, but I know you've been working on this for a while, which is awesome. Yeah, so we've definitely gone through previous chapters in it and some growth and iterations. I believe where we're at now, clearly we have Jasper and Danessa, who are our two heroes, or twins, who are basically learning this like magic crystal-based power. And I think they're on the run with their friend Mole, who's another street urchin. And it sounds like I think the kingdom is corrupt, and they're basically have sent out guards to try to capture the twins and this type of like crystal magic. So let's see what we got. And I think I am all ready. Chapter 8. Gods, I can't even remember a more horrible storm. Mole shook his arms as he came in. The guards are gone, but you just about have to be batty to go anywhere now. He took off his sopping wet clothes and wrapped himself in a blanket. He went over to the fireplace that was almost all collapsed. Not much, but maybe I can get a small fire going. He tossed in a broken table leg, a few dry rags, and set to work. It didn't take long for them to start burning a little. Need more wood, he said as he busted up the rest of the table. Jasper started pacing nervously. We have to leave soon. If Dee is in that cave, he made a motion of helplessness with his hands. I think you had better remember that spell or whatever it is to get that crystal working. If you can do that contact thing, you can relax until the storm lets up a bit. Jasper sat and pulled out the orb and put it on the dirty floor near the fireplace. Let me think. Give me those wet things. He sat cross-legged next to the orb. Mother Earth, he began, and water of life. He wrung out the clothes over the crystal and pushed it closer to the fireplace. Warmed by fire, he started talking more to himself. Earth, water, fire, and... He shook his head. Breath of life, he almost yelled. The crystals glowed to life, and a rainbow flickered briefly. Got it. Well, close enough. He stared intently at the crystals. Dee, can you hear me? Dee! Danessa was wide awake and feeling anxious as the water in the cave was getting higher. She held tight to her crystal. It began to warm and glow. She reached out. Jasper? Thank the gods! Are you okay? I saw an injury. Where are you? I'm fine. I'm with Mole. It's just a scratch. Are you in the cave? I am, but water is coming in faster than it can drain off, and the entrance is blocked with large rocks. If I try to clear them, I think the whole place might cave in. There are even some rocks falling from above. How can I get out? Jasper sighed. He felt the uneasiness in her. I don't know. Just don't panic, he thought for a second. I can think of one way, but it will be dangerous. Do you think you can wait until the storm passes? I don't know. It's getting too deep. It's almost up to my knees. There's not much room left. What can I do? Danessa was panicking. Do you trust me? You know I do, brother. Always. Then you must go with the flow. Follow the water. Use your crystal. You have the power. I believe in you, Dee. Dee was shocked at the suggestion, but decided it was indeed her only hope. She took a few deep breaths. Dear Goddess, help me. She prayed and waded into the ice-cold lake. Mole asked, what did you mean by telling her to follow the water? Is there another way out of the cave? Not exactly. The lake runs under the far wall. Once under the wall, gods forgive me, it goes over Thunder Cliffs. Are you mad? How could you do that to your own sister? Jasper had never heard fear in Mole before, or so much concern. It was the only way. She's strong. I know she'll be okay. I told you. She's much better at using the crystal's magic than I have ever been. Let me concentrate. Maybe I can help. She has to get to shore. Mole shot him a concerned look. It's too far. Won't the storm make it almost impossible? I was there once years ago. I remember there's rocks all over that area. There is a small cave. There's some sand and some pebbles, then rocks, but still, if she gets to it. Mole gasped. When she gets to it, she'll have to use the overhang as a shelter until this blows over. Now, let me concentrate. His crystal began to glow, adding a strength to hers. A bluish purple color from the orb tinted his face as he followed her over the cliffs and into the sea. Mole felt helpless as he stared at Jasper, whose face was pale now. He swore it was hours, but eventually the crystal lightened. Well, he demanded, did she make it okay? Danessa was able to hold her breath until she surfaced. The sea was rough and waves kept hitting her in the face. They also seemed to be trying to drag her under, but she could just about touch bottom. Stumbling, little by little, she was able to make her way to shore. Near exhausted, she finally made it to the shallows. Sputtering and coughing up the salt water that got into her lungs, icy rain stung as thunder and lightning danced overhead. Shivering violently, Danessa looked around to get her bearings. The cove was just to her right. Crawling up on the pebbles, she got to the water's edge and was able to then stand and hobble over the short distance to the cove. There was an overhang that went back far enough to get out of the worst of the wind and rain. She huddled in as far back as she could, still shaking from cold and exhaustion. Relieved the crystal was still with her, she reached out to Jasper. I'm okay. Hopefully the gods will ease the storm. I've never seen one so violent. I noticed, he replied. Just try to hang on. We'll be together soon. Breathing hard, Jasper nodded to Mole. She made it. The thunder was farther away now, and moving north, Jasper got up and grabbed a small pack. Looks like it's getting up around here. We got to get going. Now, Mole, you ready? As I'll ever be. Let's go. Awesome. And end of reading. Wonderful, wonderful, Mary. Thank you so much for submitting. So I think that was actually really cool. I really like that you've kind of solved, right? So you now have kind of solved the character plot or the character problem that that was the follow-up from the previous couple of chapters that we had read or the previous sections. So yeah, I'm thinking back. I really like the plight that you put them into. I'm liking how you're kind of evolving this crystal magic, and they're basically have to use the elements to basically make it work. And I think it's actually kind of cool that Jasper has to use these elements from the fire and the rain around them to basically make the crystal effective. And then that leads to them being able to talk to each other. I think that's kind of cool. Elemental magic is cool. So I think that was a nice touch. Once again, I think the magic is probably my favorite part of this. The magic was cool. I, of course, like Mole. I think Mole's interesting. I think you could probably give Mole even more actions to really elevate his character. Let's see. And then so I would say the strongest part was probably world building was pretty strong in this part. Character development was good. I think what's probably could be fixed in this is more just cutting back on dialogue. So like cutting back on the dialogue is really the biggest opportunity. Reducing wordiness to really make some of the things that they're saying sting out. And then structure. This is kind of a question. I'm kind of going back and forth on the effectiveness of it, and I can't decide how I feel. So we'll see. Okay, so let's get into it. All right. So all right. So as I get into this section, you're like, Mole said, we get into this part with Mole. Actually, no, I highlighted this. I was asking myself if the first paragraph was too much, but I think it's actually all necessary. I don't know if the wood bit is as important. I think you've kind of set up that he's basically stoking the fire. Yeah, because you've already tossed in that he's already setting the fire. So I think I would just cut that down. You asked if the chapter was too long. I wouldn't say it's too. I think once again, it just goes into, you can just cut down on wordiness. I think that all the ideas and the concepts work. I think it's just the wordiness in some parts. Like for instance, we already know he's at the fire. Not much, maybe I can get a small fire going. He tossed in a broken leg, a few dry rags, and set to work. It didn't take long for them to start burning a little. Perfect. He tossed in a broken leg and set to work. And then would almost get rid of that. So that way we can let the fire starting to stoke as we move to the action. Jasper started pacing. With things like started, it's extra wording. So you could say Jasper paced nervously, right? We don't need to say he started pacing because we know he's pacing, right? Don't have him start, just have him pace, right? That starting, it would be an example of passive language. Let's see. We have to leave soon if D is in that cave. He made a motion of helplessness with his hands. Great use of action. And I think that's clear. He made a motion of helplessness with his hands. Let the reader decide. Perfect. I actually love the way you tackled that. Okay, so you're most like wondering about the dialogue. Yeah, so I think it's more the parts with like Jasper's dialogue can probably be toned down. Let's see. I think you had better remember that spell or whatever it is to get to crystals working. If you can do that contact thing, you can relax until the storm lets up a bit. I think you had better remember that spell or whatever it is to get that crystal working. If you can do that contact thing, you can relax until the storm lets. And since we know it's storming already, I wouldn't even mention the storm. I would then use this as a character development moment for Mole. Do that contact thing, right? And then I would play around with do that contact thing. I want to see. I want to see. Right? So then I would play into Mole's little character development. I think you'd better remember that spell or whatever it is to get that crystal working. Do the contact thing. I want to see. Right? So then I can do a little character development for Mole. Let's see. Jasper said, pulled over the orb. This was all cool. I really liked this. I really liked this paragraph. This was my favorite. Give me these wet things. He started talking more to himself. Okay, so then that's saying that these beginning parts are more for Mole's sake. He started talking to his voice. I would actually rather go like his voice dropped to a whisper. Perfect. And I think that makes it a little clearer. Okay, so then now he's whispering, and I think that would just make this clear. Earth, water, fire, and good. The life. And then I think what I would do is I would end this paragraph on the glow of the crystal. I would actually draw the tension in before we even get to that. Is the crystal worked, right? Jasper, the crystal glowed to life and a rainbow flickered briefly. Jasper held light streamed through his hands, through his light streamed past his fingertips. Mole leaned in. Mole adjusted his glasses, and leaned in closer. They watched hesitantly as the crystal's light flickered. Right. So I think I just add a little bit of tension before it works. So then the reader's like, okay, well, does it work? Does it not work? But that's just a subjective thing on my part. The crystal's light flickered to life. However you want to go about it. Close enough. Jasper muttered. He stared intently at the crystal. D. Can you hear me? D. Now, this is where I was mixed on, and I can't decide how I feel. I was asking myself, because technically you're going back and forth in the two moments. So technically our present moment is with Jasper and Mole in this room. But now we're flicking to Danessa, who's in the cave. I almost think it would be stronger if you don't actually do action of Danessa in the cave and you just stick to the dialogue. Okay, actually, I guess so. This is my question to you, Mary. I think this is some clarification you have to make. When Jasper looks into the crystal, does he see an image of Danessa showing up? So can he see exactly what Danessa is doing? Or is it only an audio? He looks in the crystal is blinding, and he hears Danessa in his mind. Or, because I think Mole can hear it as well, does Danessa's words echo out of the crystal? And I think defining and clarifying that will also help the reader, bring the reader along. So that way I can understand. Do the words echo from out of the crystal and fill the entire room? Or are they like whispered from the crystal? And I think that might just clarify. I had a bright rainbow and decharged her crystal in the cave. I thought since he's not as adept, his would not be as bright, but still rainbow. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's totally fine. So then maybe like making his more like flickering, or you maybe do his like a different color. Like maybe his like a little darker, or it's just not as bright. I think that was a good strategy. Yeah, because I think technically since we're in Jasper and Mole's scene, I was almost like mixed on including this stuff and having the dialogue, just having it just be the dialogue. Now, if Jasper can see an image of Danessa in the crystal, then I would explore it. Like they saw an image of Danessa glowed within the crystal. She was she sat, barely anything was visible, barely anything was visible, right? And I think that's, no, you can't see her. The context is more, okay, so it is telepathy. Cool. So yeah, so then if that's the case, since we're technically with Jasper and Mole, then I wouldn't even do imagery, right? But I would clarify, unless you've clarified already, right? You might have already clarified in a previous section. I would just clarify that it's purely telepathy, because this means that then you have to remember that Mole is just kind of sitting there being like, well, what's going on, right? And I think you can add that as comedic tension, since Mole's probably like poking him like, hey, what's going on? Hey, are you talking to her? Because clearly like Mole wants to see some cool magic, but really Jasper is just like meditating and talking to her and looking at the crystal, which is kind of funny. So then I wouldn't even go to Danessa, because I think that would increase the tension of the moment, since we're technically staying with Jasper and Danessa. I almost wonder if doing quotes, if quoting the interiority might make this a little easier. And I don't know. I go back and forth. There's no clear thing with dialogue in mind. I kind of asked myself, would it be a little clearer? Because you made it italics, which is enough. But I'm kind of wondering, because you're going to be using this method, this telepathy method, probably a lot in the book. I almost wonder if it would just be easier to also include dialogue when they're like speaking like this. I don't know. I go back and forth. I'm mixed. I guess it's more just like, is it clear enough for the reader that they're talking to each other, especially if you're going to do it with multiple characters? I go back and forth. Something to think about. And then this is similar feedback I think I gave Eli earlier with questions. When we pose a question to the reader wants to know the first question. And then we pose a second question. They might forget the first question. And then we pose a third question. They might forget the first two questions. So unless you're doing it where like each question adds on and it's basically all just one answer, or it's intentional, I would just stick with one question. I would frame this like, I saw an injury. Are you okay? Or I saw, yeah, I would go with the injury. I saw an injury. Are you okay? Right? And I would just frame that as one question. I'm fine. I'm with Mole. It's just a scratch. Are you in the cave? Perfect, I am, but water is coming. Yep, and this is the tension of the moment. Something might be wrong. And this is good. I think their back and forth here is really good, really well done. That's getting too deep. It's almost up to my knees. There's not much room left. What can I do? Danessa was panicking. Do you trust me? You know I do, brother, always. Then you must go with the flow. Follow the water. Use your crystal. You have the power. I believe in you, D. D was shocked in the suggestion, but decided it was indeed her only hope. Yeah, so I think once again, I think this could be a style thing, Mary. Like, this is just something to think about. Technically, what you're doing is you're switching back and forth between two completely different settings in the same scene. I think for ease of reference, it feels like you should do character breaks, because right now I am in Jasper's head. I'm in Jasper's interiority, and then we're switching to D's interiority. But this just could be, this might just be a personal thing. So I think it's just something to think about, because now you're going into D's head. So D was shocked. The suggestions, and this is good, right? Like, we do want to know about D. But I think it creates more tension for then you must go with the flow, follow the water, use your crystal, you have the power, I believe in you, D. I would almost then use this as like a tension moment of, okay, let me try. Wait, the water's too high. What's that? And then have the connection was lost, right? The connection gets lost, or the connection breaks. Right? Maybe it's because Jasper's not strong enough or whatever. Then you could have this build tension, right? Of, oh no, so you just try to talk with her and now something's going to happen. Is she going to be able to survive, right? Tension, something's happening with the obstacle. Danessa is clearly having a panic attack. That's not helping her. And then I would save this. I would move this to her part to when she escapes. Mole asks, what did you mean by telling her to follow the water? Is there another? And then this was my only question, right? So if Jasper and Danessa are speaking telepathically, then how does Mole know what they're saying? Or is Jasper like saying telepathically, but he's also saying the words out loud because he's like, so you could play around with that. Mole poked him in the stomach. Mole poked him in the stomach. You were mumbling words. Right? And then that clarifies it, right? That all that was telepathic, but now Mole's like, yeah, you were mumbling stuff. I think that makes it clear how Mole knows that he was mentioning things about water, since we know that was a telepathic connection. Maybe mix in a little movement. Yeah, you could. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you could totally do that. I would play the sound effects. I think you could totally play maybe the sound effects. Like, maybe if their telepathic connection, like they can speak to each other, maybe he can like hear water flowing in the distance, right? That would actually be really interesting. What can I do? Danessa was panicking. Jasper realized that he could hear water flowing in the distance. He heard rocks falling. You could totally do that. Like, maybe their connection has kind of like, maybe he's able to kind of hear her environment, but not really. That would be a way to go about it. Let's see. Then go to the mole bit. This is all good. And then like a dialogue like this, like you could really cut this down. Jasper never, are you mad? How could you do that to your own sister? Let's see. It was, I wouldn't even say this. I would say, she's strong. I know she'll be okay. She's much better at using the crystal's magic than I have ever been. Anyway. And then I think you would break that up because that clears that moment. Mole tries to grab the crystal. Jasper nudges him away. Let me concentrate, right? And then we can go to this next moment. And I think that would make that work a little better. Let's see. Mole shot him a concerned look. Too far. I want the storm make it impossible. Yeah, and I think it's like with the dialogue, Mary. I think it's just cutting down. I think it's just some extra wordiness, which is very normal for where you're at with the draft. And then I think what his crystal began to glow, adding his strength to hers, a bluish purple color from the orb tinted his face. Small cove, there's some sand and more pebbles. Because it sounds like you're switching to Danessa's POV here. Yeah, so I think what I would now let me concentrate. His crystal began to glow, adding his strength to hers, a bluish purple. His now let me concentrate. He turned. All right, so I think this is how I would go. I think I would just make this a tension point. He turned to the crystal, closed his eyes, and concentrated. It didn't sound like Danessa. He had a helper. He had to help her. Danessa was in trouble. And then I think I would switch character POV. And then I think I would switch this here. So I'd get rid of this. And then I would go to Danessa's POV. So I would do something like that. Go to Danessa's POV. Let us see her trying to escape. And then go back to Jasper and Mole once she's escaped. Go here. Like the bits don't even have to be very long. Like you can make them as short or as long as you want. So that way we're just clear that, okay, Danessa, we showed Danessa trying to escape. Now we're back to Jasper and Mole. Now we go back to the Jasper and Mole bit. Jasper, Mole. And then you could like go back and forth, but I think that would be the way to go about it. So that way we know that we're switching character POVs. We're in Jasper and Mole's POV. All right, now we're in Danessa's POV. So that way we can go. And I think by leveraging their separate POVs, you can add tension, right? So Jasper's POV, add tension. Oh no, Janessa's going to die. Janessa's POV, she tries to get out of the cave. A rock falls. So now you've added tension. Back to Jasper's POV. Okay, concentrate on the crystal. Add my power to hers. I hope she can make it. Oh no, I might fail. Okay, back to Janessa's POV. Okay, Jasper's power helped her evade the rock. Okay, she gets to the end. She sees the end at the light of the tunnel. Is she going to make it? Back to Jasper's POV. Oh, okay, yeah, she's good. All right, woo. She's fine. Or the connection gets lost. Oh, I don't know. I hope she's all right. Yeah, so I think that's how I would go about it, Mary. That was just kind of like an example. But I think you can, right? Like I think there's a world where you can do it the way that you just did, and you can switch back and forth between with the paragraphs. But I think with this story specifically, I think you will be able to build a lot more tension and create much more suspense if you use the POV shifts to heighten tension, because we don't know if Jasper is going to help Danessa or not, right? You want the reader to assume that they're going to fail, right? Danessa's probably going to die. Oh no, look, she survives, right? But she survives because A, either she's awesome, or B, because Jasper had a helper and they're together awesome. So I think that's how I would fix that. Yeah, and that's why I was saying kind of like the structure. It's like dialogue is just cutting down on some wordiness, as you had kind of seen. And then the structure was just kind of cleaning up. I think I would alternate their POVs. And I think that would make it even more engaging. I like what you got going on. I just think it would make it pop even more. So yeah, that's what I got for you, Mary. I hope that helped out a little bit. Let me know if that wasn't let me know if that all made sense. Yeah. So definitely, and I can 100% tell, Mary, like once again, every single time I read it, your characters are coming more and more to life. I felt that this time, the problem wasn't their character development. I felt like Jasper was believable. I felt like Danessa was believable, and I felt like Mole was believable. Cutting down on the dialogue is more an editing thing, which is just very common once you kind of get through the rough draft. So I was like, if you're going to go back through this next, I would just like figure out how you want the structure and then just move on and keep writing. That'd be my recommendation. So yeah, thanks for submitting, Mary. That was definitely a fun little bit. Woo, man. All right. I feel wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. All right. So we're going to, let's see. So this next one's going to be super short. We're going to do a brief. We're going to do a little poetry, which is the Starlight Ballet poetry from Paige Penrose. So this is our Starlight Ballet. We're going to get to do a little poetry. I want to do something fun. We'll see. I believe it might already be published, so I don't think where it's going to be as much of a critique, but I thought it'd be something fun to do. And if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. Whether you're wanting daily writing motivation or maybe you want more of these, we do story and critique shows pretty consistently when we're on like a normal weekly streaming schedule. So if you're liking what you've been seeing today, tap those buttons and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, so we're going to hop into the Starlight Ballet. Awesome. Glad we were able to help out, Mary. Good luck with the next part of the process. Really, really enjoying it. I'm like so eager to see like Jasper and Inez now be put up against like some like really bad guys. And I'm really excited to see how the crystals start coming to life. I'm really excited. All right, Paige. So we got our next one. Let me pull it up. This, like I said, this is poetry. It's going to be a little shorter, but it should be good. All right, so let's do this and let me review what we had for the submission. All right, so this is a piece of poetry. In night when the stars descend to perform a nightly dance for all before they fade away. Introducing the next one, the Starlight Ballet. Starlight Ballet. Standing in my yard, eyes glued to the sky. Tiny sparkles shine bright, piercing through the veil of night. The frigid wind nipped at my ears. I stood there for 15 minutes. As I waited for the show to begin, I gazed at the shimmering curtain, eagerly awaiting for the performers to make their grand entrance. From the corner of my eyes, a dazzling dancer zipped past. It wasn't alone, and before I knew it, hundreds of tiny dancers of light came soaring across the night. They danced across the darkness, twirling through the starry stage as long as they continued to blaze, sharing a once-in-a-lifetime show for their audience watching from below. My heart skipped a beat as I couldn't tear away at an interstellar performance that would be engraved forever on this winter night within my soul. Once again, Paige, thank you so much. I always love reading and listening to poetry. I know that to get poetry right, you have to have a rhyming structure. And I personally don't have too much familiarity with specific rhyming structures. I know there's definitely a lot of different ways, or there's a lot of different well-known structures to go about with poetry. But for me personally, I always like rhyming. So when hearing that the words will rhyme, I'm like, that for me is always a win. I like the lyrical, almost the near musical aspect that poetry can infuse or can evoke. So I think that was super cool. I mean, I'm not going to speak too much like the critique guidelines. I think more I just enjoyed listening to the poetry. And I think it's a very self-contained story. It's very short. I think there's something beautiful about a Starlight ballet. And I liked that there was some writing structure. Let's see, eagerly waiting for the performers to make their grand entrance. I would almost think that, like, okay, I like personally from like a poet standpoint, I would want the end of this to rhyme, but that's just me. I like rhyming. Tiny sparkles shine bright, piercing through the veil of night. I like that. So like I almost want that same rhyme at the end of every verse. Hundreds of tiny dancers of light came soaring across the night. And that's just a me thing. Sharing a once in a lifetime show for their audience watching from below. That would be engraved forever on this winter night within my soul. Yeah, so I like having a rhyming thing like that, but I also don't know very much about poetry. So that could be just a me thing. I almost want something fantastical from it as well. From the corner of my eyes, a dancing dancer zipped past. I wasn't alone, and before I knew it, hundreds of tiny dancers of light came soaring across the night. They danced across the darkness, twirling through the starry stage, as long as they continued to blaze, sharing a once-in-a-lifetime show for their audience watching from below. I would almost like add like another paragraph or another verse here of like the cool mystical element of these like starry dancers, because this is so cool. And it's almost like I'm wondering, like, what is like, I almost want to see, like, envision, like, what is a specific movement or action happening from one of these Starlight dancers that makes our main character, which is technically our protagonist, our narrator, so changed and so moved, right? Like a dancer drifts across the sky and drops a starry eye. That's all right. But just something I think that would tie it into the main character, could maybe elevate it even more. But yeah, other than that, I really liked it. Like I didn't really have too much for it since I take poetry at what it is. But yeah, so definitely thank you for submitting that page. I always enjoy listening to it. I love music, and poetry is always that like first step in the musical direction for me. All right. So I think that was very, very cool. I definitely really appreciated getting some poetry up in here as well. Absolutely. Very nice imagery. Absolutely. There's something about the winter that really makes the stars sparkle brighter. Yeah. Absolutely they do. And like the night sky being like even more. Yeah, and you could probably even speak to that too. Like I think there's something really beautiful about stars. And that's definitely always been a huge plus for me with the night sky. Ah, so absolutely agreed. Awesome. All right, my friends. So that's going to be a wrap on our story submissions. I know we definitely have more submissions, but once again, I'll queue them up for our next show when we return for the next story and critique show on Saturday, December 21st. I'll be next Saturday. We'll be here with with a live editing session. So we're actually going to do, not actually me editing. I'm going to share with you 8 tips, 8 strategies that you can use to edit your stories more efficiently, save you money. So that way, when you turn into editors or when you turn into readers, the stories are more impactful. So we're going to go over editing and writing strategies next Saturday for a special live stream. And as we look towards creative writing on the morrow, if you don't want the fun to end, down in the YouTube description is our Reading Sprints for Storytellers playlist. This is some of our more popular story and critique episodes. Highly recommend. Definitely go check it out down in the YouTube description down below. I'll be back tomorrow with a daily writing stream. I want to say 1 p.m. Pacific, 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to make some more progress on Scarecrow. We're having some fun with some with some of this like dark world building evil magic that's happening. I'm at a fun bit with Scarecrow. So come join me tomorrow for some writing sprints. And don't forget, like the stream on your way out. Let me know. Help us show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. All right, my friends. Thank you all for being involved today. It was an awesome stream. I had a great time deep diving back into the stories, and I hope you did as well. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers.